Hey, computer, quick question. How do you properly pronounce the name of Amy's father?
Marquis.
Huh. Are you sure? Because I've heard from several other people that that the name is pronounced differently.
Yes, while the word is French in origin, it, like so many other things, has been co-opted by the British. Therefore, either pronunciation is technically correct. Also, if you visit the Worm audiobook website, it clearly denotes all author-confirmed pronunciations of character names and lists this particular name as Marquis. Please stop asking me this. I have many very important calculations I should be doing instead.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I love you.
I love you too.
Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got&Worm, a Daily Planet Films podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss the hit web serial Worm week by week, arc by arc. My name is Matt Freeman, an interdimensional telekinetic precog, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Scott, some nerd who I yanked away from his marathon Heroes of the Storm session and into a dimension where both heroes and storms are ready and waiting to brutally murder him and his entire family. Scott, how are you doing?
Pretty fucking horrible, Matt. I was winning. My Arthas was jungling like a champ, and we were gonna accomplish. I've never played MOBAs. I don't know.
Were you kiting?
This joke would have worked a whole lot better if I knew how to play a MOBA at all. But yes, Matt, as you said, this is the podcast where you, a worm expert, guide me, a first-time reader, through Wildbow's world of superheroes, supervillains, and everything in between as I inspect, interpret, and even speculate on what the story is and where it is going. This week, we are tackling Arc 17, Migration. And once again, we have a full arc's worth of interludes where we leave Taylor completely behind and tell the story of the Travelers. And once again, Matt, this is like probably one of my favorite things in Worm so far.
Yeah, I think I've probably reread this arc more than any other section of the story multiple times. This was indeed like the part of the story that was kind of very vaguely described to me that kind of made me want to read the story in the first place. And it essentially serves as an almost self-contained short story. And that's kind of my favorite thing about it, actually.
Yeah, there's so much going on here. There's so much that fills in gaps and ties back to things we already know about the Travelers. There's so much that relates back to what we've been discussing for months now. But also, you're right, it's this contained story, this kind of Greek tragedy for this one character and the thing he and his companions go through. And it's so wonderful. Matt, I was saying before we started recording how nervous I am, like for the first time in a while, because I liked this so much, and I want to do it justice here. Like, I want us to talk about it in a way that reflects just how great this is and how complex and how many different things are happening all at the same time. Because on top of this just being a really good story, it's just doing so many things simultaneously, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I know what you mean there. I mean, it's extremely intricate, and I would really hate to, I guess the feeling is, I would hate to do this and then feel like, man, I missed this thing that I wanted to talk about, because it's quite dense.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of dense, let's get into some comments and questions.
That's
Boom.
Right.
Gotcha,
Yes.
viewers, listeners. I don't even know words anymore.
Well, so first off, Wildbow wants us to imagine how Taylor would have fit into the Brockton Bay wards. And he specifically says, I want you to talk for a minute or two on how you think it'd be, how you think Taylor would fit in, how that might unfold, and how it might work or where she might go given who she is and who they are.
Yeah, I think this was in response to like a throwaway question, like, or a throwaway comment I made when we said like, hey, look, the wards are competent and cool and like working together, and wouldn't it be cool if our main character was parts of these guys that seemingly just want to do good and are good guys? Yeah, so I don't think Taylor would actually fit very well into this group at all. I think her natural hatred towards authority would mean that anytime they were given an order, I think she would work well with the team members themselves, with the exception of maybe Weld would rub her the wrong way. But anytime they got an order from above, I don't know. I don't see Taylor like following this order to the letter. If it doesn't make sense to her internally, she's not going to do it.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with what you just said there. I think the key would be whether she could get to a place of feeling like they were her comrades. Because we've kind of expressed this thing where like she categorizes people as like you're either a bully or you're a victim or you're a facilitator of bullies. But there's kind of another category that is a much smaller category, and so we didn't talk about it much. But I would call that like comrade, and she would kind of do anything for the people in that category. I guess Rachel would definitely fall in that, and so you know. And then, of course, I'm assuming in this entire discussion that Shadowstalker is not a consideration. Otherwise, it's an obvious, no.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And I think my answer to that would be that, yes, I think she could get to that place where she has this camaraderie and general level of respect with the people that are on her level and working with her in the trenches every day. The problem would always be that general authority, like, for a while I thought, well, maybe if she like gets to be leader of the organization, but I think even then she's just going to butt heads with the director more, because now she's the one directly receiving these orders and having to parse them down, and I just don't see her being okay with that.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense to me. So yeah, moving on to the next comment. Just a Lackey on Reddit mentions that Coyle always sees everybody as doubles all the time. So body doubles are kind of a natural thought for him, and I thought this was a nice remark.
Yeah, I like this a lot too. It does get into Coyle's mindset, and I think it's funny that we were talking about doubles, and there's an indication that the thing that Noelle does is kind of cloney / doubly, which is like a weird transition from what Coyle was doing. I think it's not exactly the same; it's a little different, but it is interesting that we were trying to parse like what does doubles mean, and then we have this character that's coming up to be in big conflict with our cast that makes copies of people.
Yeah, you could view it as a kind of foreshadowing, I guess.
I don't feel like it probably wasn't an intentional beat. Yeah. But I do like this feeling on how Coyle, of course, he's going to make copies of everything because he likes to have two of everything just in case.
Yeah, backups, right? Yeah. Expert Eye Roller points out that we were saying what does Taylor find attractive about Brian in the first place, and Expert Eye Roller points out that maybe she just finds it attractive that Brian is a boy who is present in the space with her and is ready to defend her from an apparent bully, especially at the beginning when kind of Rachel seemed like a bully. Brian was there to stand up for her, and that might have been what was attractive to her.
Yeah, I like this comment a lot too, and I think this commenter is correct. I think that is very much part of the initial attraction that Taylor had for this person. But I think this even kind of helps our point even more, though, because Taylor very, very realistically does not need that kind of protection anymore. She does not need that kind of person doting over her and making sure she's okay. So this initial attraction that she had, both physical and this protector nature of Brian, neither of which are things that she seems to care about anymore. So it just kind of reinforces the fact that this relationship is just on this really weird level where maybe she feels a sense of obligation to him that goes beyond, I actually want to date you.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then, so there was one comment that was brought up, and it was actually an older comment that I had sent you before, because I thought it was a great kind of little end cap to the last arc, and I wanted to just read it here. Actually, I think it's not too long, and it's basically about like what Coyle is experiencing as he finds himself cornered. And it goes, he tried to escape 100 times. He grabbed for the gun and got shot. He jumped and got shot. He tried to bluff his way out, and Tattletale told Taylor to shoot him. He crawled and got shot. He ran and got shot. He tried to twist so the bullet only hit his shoulder, but the second bullet got his head. He ran and got shot. He reached for the gun and got shot. He reached for the gun and got shot. He reached for the gun and got shot. One time he managed to disarm Tay-Tay and got killed by Gru. He ran the other way and got shot. Every second he tried something new, he got killed, and he split the timeline again to try the impossible until the bitter end, and nobody knew, not even Tattletale, stopped to think about it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that ties into this feeling of how can you, like, when I tried to sit down and think, how can you defeat Coil before we got into any of this? Like, how someone who always has a backup, always has a second universe they can jump into, how can you defeat him? And we touched on this last week, that power feels like it's really, really powerful, but it is kind of rather easily defeated, because once you have him in this situation where, I think you said it specifically, that both choices are bad ones, then his power basically becomes useless.
Yeah, right. You just have to make him fork after the point where it's too late for him to save himself.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, we got a long one today, so let's move right in.
All right, let's do it.
It's going to be good, though. All right, 17.1. So, yeah, moments ago in story time, Taylor executed Coil, and it was discovered that the boogeyman, Noelle, had left her vault. So it's extremely disorienting. It's a narrative shock to us when we open up this arc and we're introduced to this kid we don't know, Francis, having a mundane argument with his mom.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this shock carries us through basically the entire first half to 3/4 of this chapter, and some way all the way until we like reveal the traveler's origin, where they originated from, and the lack of stakes here is so off-putting. I thought at first that maybe it was just because we're like not in Taylor's mind anymore, and like you've said many times before, and like other people have said, that Taylor's mind is so intense that anytime you get out of it, it just feels calmer. But no, this is something else entirely. This is just this normal, everyday teenager argument with their mom. And it feels so off-putting. Like, I read it multiple times to try to like figure out why this felt so weird to me. And of course we learn exactly why.
Yeah. What's funny about that is even though the stakes are so low, you actually start to care fairly quickly about these mundane teenager problems, or at least I did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's a testament to the writing that we don't know who Francis is at this point. But yeah, we care about his problems. We want to, whenever you're in the point of view of a character, you want to see them succeed. It is very interesting how the fact that the interludes are never in first person. This is, I mean, we're seeing everything from Francis' perspective, but it's not I this, I that. It's a third person type omniscient thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that adds a little something to it. I think maybe you can trust the narrator a little bit more in these sections than you can when you're listening to Taylor. Yeah,
possibly so. I mean, they definitely have a different brand of self-deception, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think that's fair too.
Yeah. So what's happening in this scene is Francis is trying to leave in the middle of the holidays. He's dragging a suitcase full of something, we don't know what, and he's trying to do something that he considers very important, but which his mom obviously disregards.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I was supposed to, but I kind of picked up on, hey, he's got a computer in there and he's going to go do some nerdy LAN party thing. And I'm assuming that many people reading this book are, in fact, nerds like I am, and have at some point have had this almost exact same conversation with their parents, because I definitely have. I've definitely carted my big giant tower PC into a car to go over to a friend's house and play video games. So, I mean, we weren't competing or anything, so my argument was worse. But yeah, this felt very familiar to me, and that feeling of familiarity, I think, is going to continue throughout this arc for me, because there's a lot of things in Krauss that I see in myself, and that I think helps elevate the text for me.
Yeah, me too. We'll definitely get into that, and that's a tricky territory. My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So Francis dissembles to his mom, speaks vaguely, and his mom repeatedly challenges his statements. And you have to wonder from their back and forth: did his mom kind of make him into this person who he is, or is this just who he is?
Yeah, considering this arc is all about cause and effect, action, reaction, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to recognize this as an effect of his mother's particular style of parenting. Even though we do have this very limited amount of info, we don't see his mother very much. But yeah, it seems like she's almost toying with him in these conversations. That made me think that maybe this is learned behavior.
Yeah, right. I think it could go either way, but it's an interesting little mark that he has this combative relationship even with his mom.
Yeah.
So in the middle of their conversation, we get the first names that we recognize: Jess, Cody, and Luke. And I really don't remember which, if any, of these names we had heard before.
I feel like we've heard Jess offhandedly. Like, Jess jumped out at me immediately. That's the moment where I said, oh shit, is the Traveler's backstory? Is this their origin? This is what we're doing? So I'm pretty sure we've heard her name, but Cody, I don't think so ever.
Yeah, I don't think so. And there's this moment, where they're arguing, and you're kind of beginning to glimpse what it is that they're talking about. And his mom says, it's dangerous to mix business and friendship. And Francis responds, I'm being careful.
Yeah, and there's your alternate title for the arc. It's dangerous to mix business and friendship. And I think that's a nice little summation of every single point of internal conflict between our team that we're going to see with the Travelers in this arc, that they've attempted to do this. And that's kind of the focal point of our tragic hero in Francis Krause here, that he in an effort to win someone over, he mixed business and friendship, and it ends pretty badly. Yep.
And the details of that, we'll see how this is a good lesson on how not to do it.
Yeah.
So he marches through the cold from his house, and he drags his luggage onto a city bus. And as he inconveniences everyone on the bus with his massive baggage, he thinks a part of him thrived on being annoying. He'd like to think it nourished him. And he's also extremely smug because he finished his Christmas shopping in September, which is just sort of silly.
It's insane.
And basically he just thinks he's better than everyone, and he's a smug, self-righteous little shit, just like every teenager. And I like him already.
I remember when you told me on Twitter that he was your spirit animal, and I was like, of course. Why didn't I see that before? But no, I agree with you here. He's unapologetically smug. He's very self-righteous, and he uses that to his advantage. To influence people, maybe subconsciously. We're going to talk about that a lot throughout this arc. But he's some kind of what's the word, Matt? Trickster, I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think that works. I don't know. We'll see if it sticks. Yeah, it's weird to admit to identifying so much with a character who is so flawed, especially when it's the flaws that you identify with. But I think.
But it's honest. Everybody has flaws, and I think there is so much nerdy, insecure teenager inside Francis that I think a lot of people reading the story identify with. And I think Wildbow's ability to capture that is pretty commendable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it takes a lot of, I guess, courage on a certain level to write a character that's kind of, I don't know, I'm making some assumptions here, but so honest, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Francis eventually gets off the bus and heads to the meeting place, and he sees the object of his heart's desire, a girl who he description tenderly romances. The naked yearning and intensity that we understand is inside him doesn't break through to the surface at all.
Yeah, it's this really great moment. It's almost cinematic in a way where you can see the people crowd and Noelle's backlit, so she's glowing almost.
Slow motion.
Yeah, exactly. And I like how he said description tenderly romances, because this is in a very stark contrast to Taylor's description fucking that he did that she does. Uh-huh. She tends to describe muscle, tone and how people are cut. And there's nothing really overtly sexual here. It's just obsession. And like we said, this is something that's really kind of relatable. I was a nerdy 16-year-old kid, and I had girls that I was just this girl is the perfect girl. I look at her and just see beauty in every little thing. I think he describes snowflakes on her eyelashes or something. And geez, that's it feels familiar.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, he greets her as Captain Noelle, and this is the first we hear her name. And she responds, "People are going to stare," foreshadowingly.
Yes, yes, they will.
So yeah, the conversations throughout this whole arc are so complex because there are so many layers. And Scott, tell me if I've missed any layers here, but there's always the subject matter at hand in the conversation, plus the undercurrents of what's happening between the characters, which are always complex. And then there's the fact that we know where all this is going, like, because this is essentially a flash. This is all like a prequel, right? This is all backstory. So we know where all these characters end up, and we know that it's bad. So in this scene, on like the object level, Noelle and Francis are obliquely discussing the difficult confrontation ahead regarding their esports team, while under the surface, Francis is trying to probe the status of their relationship in all his subtle and not so subtle ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, "I like you, Kraus," which is the first time we hear Kraus, the name Kraus, which is how people refer to him, which to me directly reflects the first time in the story that we heard this name, which was Noelle screaming, "You did this to me, Kraus."
Yeah. I love that you pulled this out, and I agree so much. And like, pop culture is kind of obsessed with like prequels and origin stories, and I feel like they're so overused. Like I always like kind of think that if the prequel was the most interesting part of the story, then it would just be the story. And like, I find these kind of flashback prequel type stories usually not very good. Like, Matt, I didn't like Rogue One. Like, I couldn't believe that every have you even seen that movie?
No.
But yeah, I just didn't. Everyone loved it, and I just didn't care for it. It just felt like, to me, like so much is like, see how all this happened, and I was like, I don't care. But all that to be said, here, I think it shows the power of prequels, the power of origin stories, and what they can do, not only to tell an interesting story on their own, but to enhance things that you know about your characters in the future. How you can attach those double meanings onto every single word that people say, how things reflect not just on our protagonist, Taylor, but also on all these other characters that we know about. And we know their endpoint. We know what's going to happen to them, like you said, but we don't know how they get there. And so we're kind of listening to these conversations and hanging on these words and attaching this forward meaning to it that we wouldn't be able to do if it wasn't being told in reverse, kind of. And it's great. And if all prequels, if all origin story type things were done like this, then I would probably like them more.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is almost only incidentally a prequel, and it stands by itself as a short story. And then on top of that, you're like, you've wanted. It helps that you've wanted to know what was going on with the Travelers for 16 arcs so far.
Yeah.
Unlike, not really caring what happened, how Darth Vader became evil or whatever. I
don't give a shit how the plans got onto the stupid ship. Yeah. I don't care. Right. I don't care.
Yeah. So the correct choices were made on every level here. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And in speaking particularly to this scene again, instead of going at the 10,000 foot level that I tend to, but I like how carefully like Kraus is choosing his words here. Like he's in this kind of battle, he feels almost, that where he's like, he doesn't want to come off too needy, and he's trying to like convince himself that Noelle likes him, but without scaring them away. And this kind of, to me, reflects like how people treat Noelle in the present time, where they like have like safety gloves on and stuff, and they're like very careful not to set her off, and how to choose their words and how to talk to her in a specific way that doesn't cause her to go nuts. And like there's a lot of parallel here.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's an interesting parallel. I didn't catch that necessarily, but it is, Kraus is always, like you said, he's kind of slithering around verbally, trying to figure out the optimal way of saying something, to kind of get his target to go along with what he wants. And that was true before, and it continues to be true with Noelle. And we see him like tell Tattletale to lie to her later, and that's perfectly consistent with his behavior.
Yeah.
So Francis Krause, Trickster, as we come to know him, tenderly tries to warm Noelle's hands, and then his other friends appear, and we see Marissa, who appears angelic, Luke, who's grungy, and Jess, who looks shaggy, navigating the her wheelchair through the crowded cafe. And so, Scott, I admit I was really slow to piece together who was who the first time I read this. I think I probably pegged Trickster, Noelle, and Genesis right away, but it took me a really long time to pin down the other two of them.
Yeah, and I think this is what my slow methodical podcast reading does, Matt, because I got it immediately. I was like, this person's this one, and like I was like, I got it. I know them all. And then of course we introduced some new characters later that kind of throw that for a loop and made me kind of doubt it for a second. But no, I was pretty sure that we're meeting our core 5 here. And I was spot on.
Yeah, I was definitely thrown for a loop later. Yeah. So this conversation they're having continues regarding the imminent conflict. So it turns out they're going to have to kick somebody named Cody off of some kind of team, and Krause is going to replace him because Krause will be an asset, whereas Cody is dead weight, and they're all sure that this is the only path forward to fame and success for the rest of them.
Yeah, and it's so weird in this arc where we're going to have a giant flying Endbringer, interdimensional travel, death, crazy decisions and stuff, that the inciting incident of this whole thing is we have to kick one of our friends off of our video game team. And, right. and I think that goes to enforce this weird lower level stakes that there are and how we're along for them, although, and like this is our inciting incident. And I want to keep hammering home cause and effect every time we see it here, because it's important. It's important to like the arc thematically. It's important to what the simmer represents. It's important to all of this. And this is our first real indication of this. These are our characters making a choice that's going to have a consequence. And I think the most important part here is that Krause intervenes in this decision. He's here for some reason. He knows he should be staying out of the conversation. I think someone even says that, like, a bit later that he didn't say anything, which is not true, but he kind of pushes people towards the way he wants, even in this moment where he probably should not be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you were making a bare bones synopsis of this arc, you couldn't leave this out, even though it's very low stakes relative to everything else. Because, like you said, if it weren't for the fact that they kicked Cody off their team, the stage would not be set for the level of conflict and animosity that we see later.
Yeah, and I think even the most telling thing to me, as far as how much Krause has kind of wormed his way into this situation, is that they're allowing him to be there when they're deciding this. Like it just, like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you're going to make this decision, the 4 of you go off and vote, and then come back and tell each of them what happened. And it's just so crazy to me that they would let him be there during these deliberations. And I think it shows that, like, this was almost a foregone conclusion, and he was so confident in it. Like, he's there. He's already a member of the team before they even voted him on the team.
Right. And I mean, the other thing it emphasizes to me is, like, this is so exactly how it would go for teenagers, because, you know, I think as adults, everyone kind of, like, if we were to be in this situation with adults, there would be a sense of, like, how things should be done to you know, support a certain appearance of propriety and so forth. But teenagers are just going to be like, well, Krause is my friend, so of course he can sit here. And I mean, we'll get into that, I think, in a bit. But, like, man, I'm pretty sure I've, like, made some enemies when I was a teenager through choices that at the time I was just like, well, this just makes sense. It's just a sensible choice. And and it's like, you're just really dumb when you're a teenager, because you lack the context for, like, no, actually, if you put yourself in the other person's position, you would be really pissed off about this, but you didn't bother to do that because you didn't think to. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most surprising things to all this to me is how teenagery they feel. And that's compared to Taylor, who is living in this literal almost nightmare world compared to what these people live in. And like, where, like, she has to act more adult. She has to be willing to make these choices because she doesn't get this kind of childhood that they get.
Yeah, right. I like this beat from Luke where he's saying, Krause was saying that Cody and Marissa are type A personalities. He's not wrong. Marissa's who she is because of the mega bitch. Marissa frowned, but she didn't argue the point. And Cody is who he is because he can't stand to lose. So how's he going to react if he finds out he's been bumped for Krause? So Luke, this guy who like we see later, people kind of peg him as like a jock. He actually identifies Marissa's like pathology and connects it to her motivations, and he understands how much of a pain in the ass Cody's going to be immediately. He's very, very savvy in this way, and I think this guy would make a pretty decent cape.
Yeah. I wonder if that'll happen. I really like that this is almost an acknowledgement that they are completely aware of that the effect of the choice they're going to make is going to be bad. Like, and you almost like, as much as we've been like railing them for this choice and like calling out their youngness here, like you almost feel bad for them. Like, I don't envy their position. Like, if you're really trying to make a career out of this thing you're doing, you have to do what's best for the team, but you're hurting your friend. It's almost if Matt, like, mixing business and friendship is bad.
I don't know. Where did that come from? So they grab coffee and donuts and they head to Luke's apartment. Krause and Jess hang back and let the others just break the news to Cody. And since we know Jess from the future, I like this beat from Jess where she says, "You must be nervous." "Never," he smirked. "See, I have you figured out. You have a tell when you're lying." "Sure." "The more overconfident you act, the more nervous you are. And when you're feeling down, you poke at people, provoke them. I think you get some validation out of it. Like if you can test people and they're still your friends after, you can feel confident in that friendship." So yeah, Jess does pay attention and she does have a good read on him. And I'm pretty sure this is correct, actually.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. And I adore Jess. Like, I really do. Like, even when we knew her as just Genesis, like, she's this really interesting character and she seems like legitimately kind, and she understands Krause in some fundamental way, and just wants them like to all be best friends. And again here, Matt, her summation of Krause kind of rings true for me. Personally, I think Krause is more active. So like, I would never like actively like test someone, but I will passive aggressively test people to see how they react, to determine how they feel about a friendship or relationship. This is something I've done my entire life. I'm fully aware it's terrible, but it's something I do. And again, here I was like, geez, are you talking about me, Jess? It's really kind of crazy. But Matt, like, there's something, and I'm just noticing now, I didn't even write this down as we're going through it, that everyone in this team is really good at reading other members of this team, but it's only like certain ones of them. Like, Jess really has Krause pegged. Luke really has Cody and Marissa pegged. And I think Krause thinks he has Noelle. I don't think he does, but Krause kind of has Marissa pegged on a certain level as well. And it's like, not everyone understands everyone, but some people understand other people. And I think it shows like how this cohesion isn't perfect, because like only some people understand others. And it's just really interesting that like they never seem, as much of a team as they are, they never seem like a fully like everyone gets everyone. We all know we're all on the same page. We're all good. It's interesting. It
reminds me a lot of my high school group of friends, honestly, because there are the people in the group who are actually your friends, and then there are the people who are their friends, and it gets kind of complicated. We haven't even got to Cody yet, but like, yeah. Krause just kind of thinks that Cody is garbage, but as we're gonna see, like, Cody's in a horrible situation here, and it like if you were to extend him the slightest amount of empathy, not that he doesn't act like a jerk, but like, considering the situation he's in, it's quite understandable if you're willing to extend him that empathy. But Krause is absolutely not willing to. So absolutely, yeah. Let's. I mean, Cody's fascinating to talk about. We'll get there. Yeah, we'll do it. We're gonna do a lot of Cody. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess just like I was saying, I've definitely entertained the thought experiment of migration arc applied to my high school friend group.
Yeah, I saw this note you had here, and I got to thinking about it with my friends, some of which you know, and yeah, I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so the thing I wanted to bring up here was that we also get, as they're like talking about each other's relationships, and they're going through this whole who likes who, and why do I like this person over this person that Krause is doing. We get this first indication that there's something wrong with Noelle that some people know about. Marissa clearly knows it. Krause is aware of it, but never really verbalizes it. And we're gonna see this beat hit again and again throughout the arc, and we never truly discover exactly what it is. But Scott has a pretty good idea.
Yeah, Scott thinks he detected some things. We'll see. So yeah, as soon as Jess and Krause make it to the room, they hear Cody shouting. They head to the room, and we meet Chris and Oliver. We know Oliver as the notoriously useless Cape Oliver, and we don't know Chris at all. And I'm pretty sure that Chris was supposed to be a red herring for Ballistic, but it's probable that I just thought so because I'm dense, because he's not actually Krause's friend, and we know that Krause and Ballistic were friends. So
yeah, I can see you thinking that. I think the reason why, again, I didn't, was just that we have this dynamic where the 5 real central members of the team are all together at this diner, and it felt like these are our 5. We know these guys. Like we've seen Oliver like once or twice before. We haven't really interacted with him barely any. These are our 5. These are the ones we know. And I just felt like these people gathered, it's going to be like all the members of the Travelers we know are going to be members of these 5. So Chris just like, I was just like, oh, who's this guy?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so Cody is really pissed. And at this point, like, I think it's completely understandable. At this point in the story, especially, I don't think anybody reading this part thinks that Cody is being unreasonable. I sure didn't, because Krause like is obviously a bit of a snake, and it is a really shitty thing to do to somebody to kick them off of your like school club that you're all friends. And yeah, like we were saying before, like I think with the wisdom of age, we can say that Cody's friendships with the other team members would have never recovered from this betrayal.
Yeah, I think that's really the part that they didn't really think through. I mean, they said, yeah, we've hurt our friend, but they didn't ever think this will end our friendship. Like, yeah, right. Like if you called me up tomorrow and said, Scott, you can't be on We've Got Worm anymore, I don't think we'd be friends, man.
Yeah, my dude. I mean, like that's you can't do things like that to people, and I think like the only way you learn that lesson is by damaging some friendships horribly when you're in high school, unfortunately. Yeah. And realizing like, oh, people won't trust me if I stab them in the back. I shouldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, probably should not do that.
Yeah. So given the choice, Cody ultimately chooses to stay rather than leave, so that he can watch Krause fail. That is to say, rather than punch Krause and be ejected, he chooses to stay and watch Krause fail. Yeah,
and here's another big instance of cause and effect. It's hard to say how things on Earth Bet would have changed without Cody coming along, because presumably if he had left the apartment, he would never been teleported, and he would not have been a presence at all. So it's not clear exactly what would have changed, but it's safe to say things would have been very different.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so as they start setting up their computers for the Ransack tournament, which is the name of the game, we find out Krause gives a computer to Noelle as a gift, and she hugs him in return, which is apparently quite a big thing between the two of them. And then she begins to walk them through the strategy for the upcoming game.
Yeah, if I can take a quick second here to run off into the whole nice guy cliche.
Sure.
I don't think Krause perfectly falls into this cliche, but he doesn't fit the mold perfectly. I think he doesn't lash out in ways that the nice guy quote unquote would, but this giving of a gift as like a way to keep her around and keep her liking him is very nice guy-y.
Yeah, I think one thing we can say about Krause, and it's going to come up over and over, is that his manipulativeness is not calculated. Actually, it's more of a self-protective reflex of insecurity causing him to sort of try to paper over things and mend them in a quick and reactive way in response to like what he perceives to be threats, like the threat of losing Noelle. He's kind of reacting to protect that. He's not scheming, and that may or may not, like, you may or may not consider that to be redemptive at all. It's clearly a character flaw. It's just a matter of like how it's the difference between being an evil, manipulative person and being a flawed person, I think.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think I want to be careful not to be too mean to him throughout this entire arc, because he does make some bad choices, and he does have serious flaws that result in a lot of bad things. But yeah, there's this big disconnect between how he sees himself when you hear kind of his internal thoughts describing a situation or describing himself, and how other people describe him. And I think we're going to get into that a lot. We see people refer to him as tricky, as like sly, as like deceitful, and it's always seen through other people describing him. It's never seen through him describing himself.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. He doesn't see himself that way. So yeah, he's describing his approach to the game, and he says, "I've been practicing with an illusion subtlety assassin hybrid class." "Illusion sucks," Cody muttered. "And a 3-way hybrid? You're spreading your points too thin."
Yeah, so Matt, I know this might be a bit of a stretch, but I think the whole Cody Kraus dynamic throughout the rest of this arc, the rest of their conflict, is pretty nicely summed up in this little tiny interaction between them on the strategy element of this game. Cody is a very simplistic, straight shooter. He is focused on what he wants. He's a hard worker. He hates losing, but he thinks Kraus is spreading his points too thin. But Kraus is more strategic. He looks towards the end game. His whole strategy involves like picking people off and being annoying, but trusting his teammates to be able to take care of themselves until the end game, where he can come in and use his strategy to win the game. And that's very different. That's the two of them very different. And I think the clever part of that to me is the fact that Trickster's strategy requires him to trust his teammates to go off on their own and do their own thing. So he just seems generally like a better team player than Cody does. And there's a lot here, and I think we're going to kind of hit these points as they butt heads throughout the rest of the arc. But it's really cool how it's all kind of laid right here with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trickster is a support class, and that's the way Kraus thinks. Yeah. So suddenly, while they're starting up the game, the building shudders and the power dies. "Shit, the tournament," Luke says, underestimating his predicament severely. The building topples over, and Kraus has a relatively lucky fall, not really injuring himself, but Noelle falls very badly, and then a number of computers fall onto her. And at this point, Kraus hears someone screaming, and the scream persists even when he covers his ears. So he goes down to where Noelle is. He makes his way down and finds Noelle badly injured and unconscious and bleeding. They find that Chris is dead. His head was crushed by a bookshelf, and everyone else has suffered relatively minor injuries.
Well, that's why we don't know who Chris is.
Yep.
No, but the tonal shift works so well here, because we've been playing in this false world almost literally, where the biggest things these kids have to worry about is our friends being mad at us for losing in a video game tournament. And suddenly, without warning, we're pulled, again, literally, into the world of Worm as we've seen it again. Like with these high stakes, with death, injury, horror. We're back. We took a half a chapter off, Matt, but we're back. Hooray.
Yep. It's going to pull us back in. So they all decide to go out the window and to climb down the face of the building. And this is, in fact, Trickster's first call, I suppose, as the leader, maybe, with Noelle down. And it's not a great one, really, because relatively soon Luke is going to slice his leg open going down the face of the building.
Yeah, it's very interesting because he takes control almost immediately, and he starts ordering them around, and yeah, there's a consequence of what he told them to do, and it is kind of a minor one, and arguably like not directly his fault. Like it's not like he pushed over Luke or anything. It's just on their way of getting down, he got hurt. but it is something that you feel like he will be blamed for. And I think that trend continues throughout the arc as well, that he makes these decisions and things happen, some of them directly related to his decisions, some of them indirectly related, but everything gets heaped on him.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is everyone else is kind of too distracted by their own various problems, like seeing their best friend be crushed by a bookshelf or being badly injured, that he's the only person who is in like the mental state to even be making calls, period.
Yeah.
And that's why he falls into that role. And it's almost like this has all been set up ahead of time, like a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah, almost as if.
Yeah. So at a certain point, they all realize that the keening sound in their heads is in fact in their heads and not coming in through their ears. And then a shape appears, a 15-foot tall alabaster woman wreathed in myriad wings. Her eyes are gray, cold, and inhuman. And Jess identifies the creature, the Simurgh. But why is she here? Jess asks.
Well, I gotta say, Matt, I was imagining the Simurgh as kind of like a snake thingy that flies through the air, and this was not it. But like usual, Wildbow's things are way cooler than I ever could imagine. This is really cool. I like this design a lot.
Me too.
And like, it's so funny. Like, I'm going to call attention to these, but like, there's so many clever hints thrown throughout this arc. Like the "why is she here" bit, it works. Like it's a clue, but it also works in the moment. Like it jumps out at you, but not too much. Like it's very easy to see this and say, someone's like, "Oh God, why is an Endbringer here? What's happening?" And that not just be something anyone would say, but it's a one clue towards our mystery that gets solved.
Yeah, right. And there's a huge difference between why is she here and why is she here? You know.
Yeah.
Which you don't necessarily detect the first time through, although you may.
I did not.
Yeah. 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 So
that was a long chapter.
Yeah. I mean, it's important though. It's the introduction chapter, which sets up essentially all the billiard balls for what's to come. So let's move into 17.2. The group makes their way down the slick, hazardous face of the building as quickly as possible, while Scion dukes it out with the Simurgh near them.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out here that like 4 pages ago, we were arguing video game strategies, and now we're like witnessing 2 superpowered things fly around and punch and shoot lasers at each other. Like, I know, again, that it's played as a reveal, and then we learn that the travelers have literally moved dimensions, but this tonal shift is like so big that it's a wonder we didn't like realize this immediately. That was like, this is such a big change that we're not even on the same planet anymore.
Right. Yeah. How could you care about that stuff when the stuff is going on?
Yeah.
So Luke at this point cuts his leg open, and Kraus takes over carrying Noelle. Kraus is calling all the shots now. He reasons that Marissa will be the most sure-footed as a trained dancer, so he tells her to take the lead. I think that's the little trickster's toolbox we're seeing, maybe.
Yeah, sure. And I don't think this is the first time we're going to make a Taylor comparison here, but this is an apt one. He might not be the official leader of the Travelers yet, but as soon as shit hits the fan, like we said, he takes over. And like you said, like I originally wrote here, like that he feels like he's the best one to make these decisions, but as I went through it again, it doesn't seem like it's actually conscious. Like you said, it's just that he's just doing it. No one else is even thinking about it. He's just doing it. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that's really, really important to the events that happen.
Yeah, right. And that definitely also kind of sounds like Taylor, where she can't stop herself from taking charge.
Right. Yeah.
So the Simurgh eventually emerges from a crater where she was hiding, and Kraus realizes that she had created a telekinetic illusion of herself to lure Scion away. We're starting to get a sense of what this Endbringer can do. And then she starts telekinetically constructing something elaborate out of scavenged electronics.
Yeah, and God, we're going to learn so much more about what the Simurgh does throughout the arc. We learn it in little bits and pieces, and I'm still not sure I have like a full grasp on everything she's capable of, but I do know what she represents to us narratively, and Matt, I love it. We'll talk about that later as we learn it, but it's so great.
Yep. So as they're approaching street level or getting a better look at things, Krauss notices the absence of other people. Relatively little time has passed since he was outside, but nobody's around at all. Finally, a couple of flying heroes do arrive, but one is killed immediately by a telekinetic debris, and the other is held at bay easily while the simmer continues to work.
Yeah, with just more hints and indications that something else is going on besides just what we're seeing. And like we said, these minor beats are very, very cleverly masked. It's not as if we're intentionally hiding something from the characters or the readers. It's there. It's just hidden behind a little bit of rubble.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so again, Krauss makes a call that they'll descend down through the building rather than try to climb down the torn up surface of the building. So as they make their way down through the building, Krauss asks Jess what she knows about the Simurgh, because Jess is their resident Cape nerd. Jess starts to tell them the story of her first appearance when people still thought she might be a force for good like Scion. She appeared in Switzerland and stayed in place peacefully for 3 days, and then suddenly everybody who had interacted with her, well, we'll find out later.
Thanks, Jess, for holding on to that reveal. It's really good, though.
Yeah. So Krauss chooses this moment to remember that Cody was one of the boys who had approached Noelle and that he'd been rejected.
Oh, really, Matt? Does he choose this moment, or is this moment chosen for him?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say this is maybe the first like explicit moment where he's having like intrusive thoughts that are setting things up for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although he doesn't realize it yet, and he'll kind of come to, and then he becomes more alert, but it's already working on him.
Yeah.
So the kids finally make their way out of the building just in time to see the Simurgh cleverly circumvent the power of the shield-generating cape Grandiose, and then brutally impale him on a tangle of rebar.
Jesus fuck.
And then we get our familiar Grandiose down, ZD6, as the man tries to argue with Dragon that he's not down, and then she just blows him up remotely.
Matt, you're playing video games. What happened to the video games?
I know, this little segment here is such an effective like gut punch of like, oh god, oh my god, this is horrible. Because like just the moment where he's like, is there any message? Dragon's like, is there any message you would like me to pass on to your wife and child? And he's like, fuck you, Dragon. And she's like, okay. Yeah. So the kids run. Alexandria shows up, but even she can't seem to harm the Simurgh, who appears to see the attacks before they happen and sort of counter them. Krauss understands and voices the understanding that Grandiose was killed because he stayed in the area too long.
Yeah, and the classic way of ramping up tension in any situation is to add a ticking clock to it, and now this scene has like 12 of them.
Yep. So we get the image as they're running of this giant wheel the Simurgh has built, powered up now and floating, surrounded by a hurricane of flying debris as the heroes close in. Simurgh finishes it, and then the wheel, which is now a portal, begins to spray architecture and living things out across the city. And one such object, a monster, lands near the running kids, and this thing has bark-like skin, claws, and jagged teeth. And another, a hulk of a man, breaks his body when he lands nearby, and the first monster just starts eating him immediately. Something nearby screeches, and all the kids promptly throw up.
Yeah, seems like there are some Case 53s here, huh?
Yeah.
It seems like it.
Yeah, so Scott, I was trying to be coy here and use the word monster every time, because like that's kind of a more so for one thing, like the first time I was reading this, I was really not sure if these were Case 53s or if these were like something else from somewhere else. Like you don't know, like you're never told that they're Case 53s. I think it's a safe bet due to the number of clues we end up getting.
Yeah.
But they act a lot like, especially this first one we get, where it just like starts eating somebody. Seems just more, it's just like a monster. It's just like a horror monster.
Yeah, I went back and forth, and it wasn't really until they found the vial box that I said, okay, so the dimension that she opened up to was clearly Cauldron's base dimension, and threw a bunch of shit, including all these Case 53s that they've been keeping. So I think it's funny, we have this indication that Cauldron is releasing Case 53s, but maybe a lot of it was not so much releasing, and a lot of them were part of this initial huge breakout almost, as the Simmer pulled them all here. They act very different, and I think it is supposed to kind of mask what they exactly are, because like these are very different from the ones that we've seen. But also you have to think that these are people that have had their memories erased and been probably caged for who knows how long. So they're probably going to be a little just crazy.
Right. Yeah, totally. So Scion then returns, having returned from the decoy, and destroys Simurgh's machine, and then kind of knocks her down.
Yay.
Kraus tries to prompt Luke to figure out where they are in the city, but he's completely lost, and he's also distracted by the singing. There's this section where they come across this man with giant head and a tiny torso and withered arms, and his head is like shattered from the impact, and he's like, "Help me!" And Marissa approaches him and is like, "How?" And the thing says, "Give me your memories. Give them. I want to dream again. I haven't dreamed in so long." I'm pretty sure that like every hair on my body stood up the first time I read that, and probably every subsequent time. I just love that part.
Yeah, and I think this ties into the confusion that you were talking about, where I was really confused here, where they seem like Case 53s, and there are hints that they've been in confinement for a long time. I really like the beat here where he specifically says that the arms and legs of this thing had atrophied, almost as if it's been chained up or locked up for so long it hasn't used its limbs. And then you learn as we go through that the Simurgh invaded Cauldron headquarters, and it kind of shifts you back to just feeling sorry for these poor people and thinking that this was the life that Alexandria gave them when she offered them a choice without telling them what the choice was.
Yeah, right. You're gonna get to live until you get shot out of a portal and splatter in Madison, Wisconsin.
Nobody wants to get splattered in Madison, Wisconsin.
So they hear something howling behind them, and even as the Simurgh song seems to fall away, just in time to run into a chain link fence, and a warning that they'll be shot if they approach.
Yeah, and I think this is the first time we see the travelers in this situation where they are alone. Everyone, like everything around them, wants to kill them. Nothing is friendly to them. They are on their own here, and it's depressing, and like. We're on chapter 2, Matt. They're playing video games a chapter ago.
I know. And now we're moving on to chapter 3. So yeah, the group is unable to get any response from the soldiers on the other side of the fence, and they back off when guns are pointed at them, and then they run for cover when some debris from the Simurgh Scion fight crashes their way. And we're consistently getting these beats of Jess making remarks that suggest the situation is even worse than the others realize, but she never elaborates, and then refuses to elaborate when Kraus confronts her about it.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this much yet, but after our initial slow start in this arc, the entire first half just moves. And Wildbow like ramps up that pace as the danger escalates, and part of keeping that pace up to this constant level of moving is to establish this fear of things we don't know. We don't know how bad Noelle is hurt. We don't know where our character's eye are, and we don't know what's so bad about the Simurgh that's causing everyone to freak the hell out. We know all these things are bad, but we don't know how bad, and this lack of knowledge like makes you extrapolate like the worst possible thing, which keeps your stakes high. It keeps you tense, and it actually serves to make readers read faster, which takes the elevated pace that Wildbow is actually already setting and then cranks it up a notch. Because now you're going through these events that are happening really fast, and you're going through them even faster.
Yeah, no, totally. There's so many things to care about on so many levels. Yeah. So yeah, while Cody breaks into a nearby house and goes to open the door for them, Kraus looks over his friends. He kind of looks over Oliver, a second string friend, unattractive and without personality. He looks over Marissa, who has been burnt out by her mother's relentless pressure to strive until she found security through obscurity in the gaming club, and he's kind of analyzing them.
Yeah, and again, I think you got to wonder if this is the Simurgh influence here, or just Kraus taking a second amongst chaos to look at his tools and decide who he can use here and who he can't. It's clear he doesn't really respect Oliver at all, but he does respect Marissa on some level.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so I tend to miss pieces of texture like this when I'm reading. It's just kind of how my brain works. Maybe it's a bad habit, but I want to emphasize the atmosphere that the following scenes are taking place in. So inside this house they break into, stacks of magazines covered every surface in the living room. There were plastic bags with tops tied sitting underneath the hall table, and artwork that included paintings, clay figures, vases, and bird sculptures sat on every surface that wasn't occupied.
Yeah, I usually miss this background stuff as well, because my focus is always on characters that when I see scene description, I read them, but I kind of glaze over them.
Yeah.
But that's part of the reason I enjoy doing this podcast, is because these detailed rereads has me pay attention to this stuff, like forces me to kind of. And you're right that this scene works really well because it is really representative of the chaos that's going on. It's another part of that "where did everyone go" puzzle. And this, Matt, starts what is a really, really interesting 3-beat throughout the rest of this. We see here that every single piece of surface has bird sculptures on it. And that bird 3-beat is going to continue throughout it. We're going to see birds a few more times in key spots when we're kind of showing the influence of the Simurgh here. And I think this, to me, represents, obviously the birds are a pretty clear representation of the Simurgh because of the wings, the winged nature of her. I think they even call her Crazy Bird Lady multiple times throughout the arc. Yeah. So we're seeing that, like, almost as if she's watching over all this. She's present in all of it. She's here with them through everything that happens here.
Yeah, and if you don't buy that this is an intentional symbolism, just wait until the last bird beat.
Yeah,
and, I think you will. Yeah, so once they get inside, they inspect Noelle, who seems to be basically dying. Jess explains a bit about the Simurgh and says that she first appeared in Lausanne, Switzerland. People tried to communicate with her, and eventually she started her song, and it caused a panic, which was intensified by the strange thoughts the singing caused. But then Jess ends the story here, even though Krauss suspects that there's more to it.
Yeah, he's really perceptive here, Matt. She pauses for a fraction of a second before answering a question, and that's enough for him to lead to believe that there's more going on. And I think that shows as everyone else is like being affected by this song, is like losing focus, unable to stay clear. He doesn't seem that affected by it. He's noticing these small, minute character things that people are doing still.
Totally. So yeah, Jess sends Krauss to find something for everybody to drink, and he heads into the kitchen and hears a small banging noise. And he checks the backyard and finds a caged bird, I believe a cockatoo, bashing its head in essentially against the metal lip of the cage. And worse than this, he notices something in the cage. We don't know what it is, but we know that it pushes him beyond fear to despair.
Hey, look, Matt, it's our second bird beat.
Yep.
A bird showing our character something very important that's going to matter towards the rest of this and influence how everything's handled. We're going to get to this big reveal, the dimensional reveal at the end of the chapter, and we're going to talk all about it. But I do like parts of how this reveal is handled, for sure.
Yeah. So Krauss then kills the bird out of pity, which kind of makes us like him for putting it out of its misery. But it's also mildly alarming that he does the deed so readily. And then he keeps the knife on him, which has to be a beat deliberately placed to follow right after he thought about what a deranged creature with opposable thumbs could do. It's just like, I'd hate to see what damage he could do manipulating a human. Oh, good, a knife I can carry with me. And I'll be honest, at this point I was leaning pretty heavily toward Krauss killing Cody in the near future.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we're being set up to feel. It's so funny because, like, you can do this over and over again throughout the chapter. What is the Simurgh manipulating to cause certain events? What beats are Krauss making a decision, or what beats are specifically decisions being made for him? And the taking of the knife afterwards, the killing the bird, and then slipping the knife in his arm, I think. He hides it. So he has it later when he's fighting these monsters at the burger joint. Which leads him to survive the encounter, which leads him to this case of superpowers, which they drink, and you can extrapolate these out. Like, you can do this over and over again throughout this arc, and I don't think we're gonna do it for every single one of them because we'd be here all night. But like, there's so much cause and effect going on here. There's so much a chain of choices, and it's so important to what the Simurgh actually does, and we'll figure this out later.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I agree. Yeah, so when he brings Jess her water, he confirms that she knows whatever the thing is that he just learned looking into the birdcage, although we still don't know. But he still suspects, even after this, that there's still more bad news that she knows about Simurg that he doesn't, and she doesn't deny it, but she still won't elaborate.
Yeah, and now, Matt, this is where I'm starting to think we're kind of bending over backwards to hide this dimensional reveal. That's really, really pushing me on my hiding stuff from the audience for dramatic reveal dislike thing. But we'll wait until the end of the chapter to really dive into that.
Yeah, okay. So they're distracted by some gunfire outside, and Kraus decides to ask Marissa to look over Noelle for signs of internal injuries.
Yeah, another hint towards like how comfortable Noelle is with physical contact. I wonder if that will matter lately.
Yeah.
And you do start to see that the Simurg singing really start to build at this point. Like Kraus almost has to fight back from losing his shit on Oliver for like suggesting that Noelle is modest. Like, you don't know her. He doesn't do anything, but he's thinking it.
Right. Yeah. He's getting increasingly on edge and gradually becoming aware that this might not be entirely him. But it doesn't really matter, actually. Yeah. So Cody does his very Cody approach to conflict resolution of telling Kraus that he thinks he's an asshole, to which Kraus replies with his very Kraus approach of passive aggressive cockiness.
Yeah. I don't want to say that like neither Cody or Kraus is perfect in this scene, and Kraus is our point of view character, so we sympathize with him a little more. But like you have been saying before, I think if we try, we can imagine what Cody must be going through right now. He's watched in the course of a day, he's been replaced within his group of friends with this person that he considers this cocksure asshole, and he makes in this moment this correct kind of assumption that Kraus would fuck over any of them if it meant helping Noelle. He would do that, and he does.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is that as much as we're tempted to side against him, he's quite correct very often.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, but when she said she wasn't interested, I accepted that. I walked away. Stayed her friend. You didn't. You slithered your way in, pressured her. And then Kraus responds, I just let her know I was still interested while respecting the boundaries she set. If you don't believe me, ask her. Yeah. And yeah, so like, I think it's really interesting. And you tweeted something along these lines. But I think people could and indeed do argue all day about whether Kraus is really an irredeemable snake or just kind of a cocksure, persistent guy. And I mean, it's interesting because this little back and forth right here is like the perfect encapsulation of that argument.
Yeah, and I was tweeting about this, and I got some responses to my tweets to make me think that the popular opinion amongst Werp fans is like, Kraus is awesome, Cody's the fucking worst, we hate him. And knowing what we know about how this whole thing ends, I get that sentiment, but like, I understand Cody a lot here as well. And the thing about Kraus is, like we've said before, he masks his insecurity with assholeness almost. So he comes off as a jerk to a lot of people, and those observing him that don't have our point of view on him looks like this snaky, always confident, egotistical jerk. But we do know that's kind of not true. And again, I'm not on Team Cody here. I'm not. But like, imagine what this poor guy's going through. Like, these emotions are high. He's being fucked by this giant Endbringer, and like, this guy took your girl, or at least you think that he did. He took your spot on the team, and then as soon as the crisis happened, he's leading the team, and like, you can get what he's going through.
Yeah, no, totally. It's still at this point, other than the fact that he's like making a bad situation worse, which makes you kind of think he's just kind of an idiot. It's like, I've never been, in this bad of a situation. I don't know how I would react, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Krauss manages to get him to drop the conversation by pointing out that the Simmerg's scream might drive any argument that they're having in a violent direction. And then he changes the subject to making sure everyone is armed. So Krauss gives Oliver a hatchet, and then he starts playing with the nail gun. And Cody says, "This is a mistake. A ranged weapon? We walk upstairs with this stuff, and in half an hour we'll have killed and butchered each other." And he kind of has a point here.
Yeah.
And then I like Krauss touched the small chainsaw that hung on the wall, saw Cody and Oliver stiffening in alarm, and decided against it. And he eventually selects a curtain rod that could serve as a spear.
Yeah, this is such a wonderful little scene, and I think it's hits a lot of comedy beats, and I think that serves to relax the tension a little bit, which is important. But we can again play with cause and effect here, and wonder if Krauss chose the spear because he wanted the spear, or because that's what put him in the best position to make it through the future events to get the canisters and start down that road.
Yeah, I like to imagine this scene being filmed, and like in a film you're not in Krauss's head. So as you're watching him like wave his hands over these weapons and linger over the chainsaw, you might actually be wondering, like, is he about to snap and kill everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they go back upstairs and they learn that Noelle is certainly bleeding internally. Krauss decides that he's going to go outside to try to find a doctor, and Cody and Marissa agree to accompany him. They wonder where all the people are as they're walking outside. And whatever it is that Krauss figured out, he seems to know why there aren't any people. And he lies seemingly more smoothly than Jess did anyway. We're being prompted to try to solve the mystery ourselves, I think. And I wonder, Scott, with your powers, did you connect clues that can be found by looking into a birdcage with reason why there aren't any people around? Because I sure didn't.
I did not. It is a cleverly well-hidden clue. Even if you think what's at the bottom of a birdcage, newspaper, I still don't think that necessarily draws you to the conclusion that we reach here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if anybody does. Let us know if you did, But yeah, so here we're finally told, though. We're basically brought to this point, and the tension is released. We're told what happened. The reason Luke got lost in his own neighborhood, the reason the Simurgh was here. The newspaper had the name for the president of Earth, of United States of America in Earth Bet, not the president of Krauss's America, presumably in Earth Aleph. Krauss isn't from Earth Bet. The Simurgh brought him here. He's from an Earth where there are no Inbringers, and there are 1,000 times fewer Parahumans.
Yeah, so this is it. This is our big reveal. And I think before I want to get into talking about the parts of it I like and the parts of it I don't, I wanted to touch on something briefly, because while I didn't see things particularly going this way, I did kind of suspect their tiny little note of setup all those chapters ago that there are two versions of Earth that are in contact with each other would end up mattering in some way, especially kind of with how often people in the Reddit specifically referenced, well, that's how things go in Earth Bet. So it kind of seemed like this dimensional thing is going to matter at some point in the future. I don't think that made any of this, I don't think it ruined any of this for me, but I was expecting the two Earths thing to matter at some point. But I do really like it here. I love how it fits in with the travelers themselves. I love how it fits in with the clues outside of this arc that we've seen. How they, Trickster seemingly didn't care about the planet. There's that note where he's like, you can become the leader of the entire planet for all I care. And it makes sense now. This isn't his home. Why they're lonely. All this makes sense now. It's really good.
Yeah, totally.
So the reveal itself, Matt.
Yeah.
We both know I'm pretty particular when it comes to masking information characters know from the audience for dramatic effect. And I do think we have a little of that here. There are parts of this I absolutely love that we've talked about already, how jarring the tone felt, the little tiny hints that we've been given along the way that are so hidden that there aren't even really hints until we get the reveal itself and then realize that they were hints. All of that works really well. It's really well done. It's really set up great. I like it a lot. Where things do start to get a little shaky for me is when Krauss figures out everything. He knows it all, but we still hold that reveal for the end of the chapter, so it lands at this chapter end moment. And I get dramatically why that happened. I just thought the execution of it like tugged on my annoyance strings a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it annoyed me. I guess I can see the argument that, like, so if this reveal had been held any longer or like to the next chapter, then I definitely would have felt like, okay, that like it almost would have missed its moment, you know?
Yeah.
There was an appropriate moment to reveal it, and I guess I do feel like this was the appropriate moment to reveal it. Yeah, I guess I don't have the pet peeve you have necessarily, in the sense that it's not something I notice as I'm reading, but it is, like you've said, it is like an artificial way of creating tension. And what's funny is there's plenty of tension in this arc. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would say to do anything different.
No, and like, this is something that I fully recognize is a me thing, and it just, whenever I start to feel like almost oppressively manipulated by a story, like that I'm like being intentionally hidden stuff from just for dramatic effect, that's when it annoys me. There are things in here that work really well though. Like, I like the fact that he sees the newspaper and we don't. Like, I like the fact that the reveal is not the minute he sees the newspaper, because there's this really wonderful beat where like he's almost not even processing it yet, and it makes sense how we don't show the newspaper. We let him like kind of sit with it and process it, and like, what did I just see? How is that putting the pieces together for me? I like that a lot. And then he goes to Jess and has the conversation with her where they both admit that they both know this. And I even almost like that it's not revealed here, because it makes sense within the story, because they're surrounded by their friends and they don't want to tell them. But for it to carry on into a whole nother scene after that, where our character is not thinking about it at all, it's not revealing it, just to hold for this end of the chapter, that's the part for me where it just gets like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could have been rearranged slightly in a very micro way, but yeah, we'll yeah. I don't know, it doesn't bother me too much, but I do like get what you mean in the sense of it being manipulative, which it is. It's just a certain style. Yeah,
and I fully expect people to vehemently disagree with me on this. I'm fine with that. I would never like knock the work down a quality level or anything because of this. It's just Scott pet peeve.
Yeah, sure. So we move into 17.4. The trio hear a scream and they follow it to a burger joint. There are 8 people and 3 monsters within. The monsters are as follows: a guy with a very long neck and redundant scythe arms called Egesa, a giant malformed woman, Gueris, and a young woman with striped in horizontal lines, Matroska. I'm not even going to try to go over the creepy cryptic dialogue that they have amongst themselves, although I do want your reaction to it.
Yeah, so my assumption at this point had continued to be that these monsters are case 53s, and then they start talking in this weird language, and I'm like, wait, what? And like, I even went and tried to like sneakily Google the language to see if it comes up with anything. I didn't come up with anything. I don't know if I was just doing it wrong, but it's not any language that I was able to immediately find. So yeah, this kind of threw me for a loop, and it had me doubting once again. Are these case 53s? Is this something else? What's going on here?
Yeah, no, I definitely did. I was like, are we seeing some whole new thing, or is this something we're familiar with, case 53s?
Yeah, and there was a moment where they mentioned that they're wearing like prison garb, and I was like, oh fuck, did we just break into the birdcage? Is that what's happening? And I got like really excited for a moment, thinking that was a possibility, and I was like, well, no, I don't remember there being this many monsters at the birdcage.
Yeah, I wonder if that sounds like a familiar thought that I might have had several years ago when I read this, but yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, it seems from context that Matryoshka consumes people in some sense, and probably takes on some of their attributes and then permanently digests them if they stay in her grasp for too long. So she starts to consume Weris, and Kraus, probably acting under the influence of the Simurgh, charges and stabs Egesa with a spear. And to my mind, this is like totally insane and not like him at all. And in his thoughts, he admits that this might be the case, but that doesn't really stop him from doing it.
Yeah, you're right. This is so obviously the scene where, like, we know that Kraus is the type of subtlety, trickstery type of person, not like direct action, gonna charge you with the spear. So, like,
Yeah.
it goes against everything that we've seen in his character so far. And I like how he almost has to check himself several times. Like, there's one point where he's knocked down one of them and he's starting to think about the like what he can do with the other two, and he's like, wait a minute, no, I'm just here to help these people, and like I don't need to try to brutally murder all these monsters. That's not what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, totally. But he does move on, and he attacks Matryoshka as she's starting to disintegrate and wrap around Weris. But then Egesa, who he just stabbed, gets the drop on him, but doesn't kill him. Probably not out of the kindness of his heart, though. It's probably just because they want to feed him to Matryoshka.
Yeah, there's like a lot you could talk about here about the Case 53s and how they look, and then how their powers work, and how otherworldly and disturbing that is, and how much of your perception of them is based on that whole thing. Because we have these, if we fully agree that they're Case 53s, which is what I've convinced myself this is what this is, they're thrust into this world. They have the singing messing with their minds just like everyone else does. They are lost in a world they don't know. People are hunting them. They lash out, and they lash out in the only way they know how. They use their powers to escape. And they attack the first things that they see, which is kind of exactly the situation that the travelers are in, and kind of exactly what Kraus does here. So, like, as much as we're seeing these things as monsters, like, it's very easy to empathize with them too.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally correct. And in fact, these people are victims. And if anything, their situation is much worse than Kraus's situation. And they don't do well. So
but
then there's this.
But like Worm, they're also like eating and digesting people, so like they're not totally innocent and everything.
Yeah.
But right. I think that's intentional. We're supposed to see that kind of parallel.
Yeah. Right. Then we have this moment where it says Kraus slipped, so to speak. He hadn't even realized he was resisting the song, but in the pain, in his momentary fear, he let himself listen, looked at the shapes that were filling in the dark places he could see. And then he flashes back to his first meeting with Noelle, where Noelle is very, very unapproachable, but Kraus is persistent, which is the one quality we understand by now is at his core. Marissa comes to protect Noelle from him, and we get more reinforcement of Kraus's reputation as a manipulator.
Yeah, and like we've been talking about before, it is really interesting to me that most of Kraus's reputation as sneaky and manipulative is seen externally from stories that other people are telling. Stories that we actually don't get to hear very often. Like, everyone starts telling stories about this time that Kraus did this, but they never finish them. So we never actually see him like in the middle of a prank or a manipulation or anything. But we see him as persistent. We see him put Noelle up on this pedestal. Does he manipulate people? Yes, I think he does. But like you said, it's all subconscious. He's not aware that he's doing it. This scene, for instance, I think he genuinely wanted to tell Noelle that he liked her paper and like was interested in her, and then like just so happened to hear them talk about games. I think, yes, we see here that him like joining the team was probably in an effort to get closer to Noelle. Is this kind of manipulation? Yeah. What is he aware that he's doing it? No.
Yeah, and also that's not a terribly egregious like example of manipulation. Like, no,
not at all. I mean, you're just like, I want to be closer to person. I like this person. I want to be near them. I will join club. Like, that's why people join clubs.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Yeah. So I really like these transitions between the flashbacks and reality. So like, for example, the lunch tray appears near the beginning of the flashback to the cafeteria with Noelle. And then it's the plastic tray clattering to the ground in the burger joint back in our storyline. that brings us back.
Yeah, it's very, very cinematic. And I can't help but think Wildbow has a bit of a video editor eye here when he comes up with stuff like this, because you can almost see the tray falling, maybe in slow motion, and you can like see the cut back. Like I imagine it cuts like back as soon as the tray hits the ground, and you can even color grade the flashback and the present scene differently so that transition is really clear. But it's all there on the page. You got a great scene set up here visually, and it's all there on the page.
Yeah. This whole arc is, I find myself just automatically visualizing, which I see as a sign of clear writing.
Yeah.
So Kraus is still like mentally out of sorts, even more so now, actually. And he slashes Agace's neck with his hidden knife. And then he runs from Weris, and she catches him, and he stabs her hand, but it's his own hand that bleeds.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer that we see Gueris die here in a second, because that power sounds really cool, and I'd be interested to see how that plays out. Matt, so here's something maybe you can help me with. Do we have any idea where any of these names come from? Can we play the name game with any of these three? A cursory scared of spoilers Google search of mine didn't come up with anything outside just references to these chapters.
Well, Matryoshka doll is the nesting doll, with the
that makes sense.
The Russian doll with where you put one doll inside of the other doll inside of the other doll, and her power is she kind of like eats people and puts them inside her, and she can put multiple people inside herself. And there's like some sense in which there's a precedence to them in the layers. So hers is the only one that comes off to me as like a cape name, like it's based on her power. The other two, I was either like, well, maybe that does mean something, or I was like, maybe these guys haven't had their memories erased yet, and these are just their names. But
yeah,
I don't.
Could be.
We don't really know how all that works, so it's really just a conjecture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I have there. So then two capes arrive, Myrddin and Armsmaster. They quickly suss out Weris's power and kill her. It's pretty brutal, actually.
Yeah, like it's like they don't have time for it, and they just want to kill her and get it over with. Like I know, again, these Case 53s have been murdering innocent people and eating them, but I was kind of shocked like you were, at how brutal this was. I guess because they look monstrous, they're just kind of lumped in the same category as an Endbringer, so we just got to kill on sight immediately. Do we want to play the name game again with our new hero?
Sure. Actually, I didn't fully realize that you hadn't seen Myrddin yet.
Maybe we saw him like in passing or a name.
Yeah, I think he might have been working. I think he was working with Eidolon in the Simurgh battle, the Leviathan battle. But yeah, it was
way
too
much
passing.
going on there.
Yeah, with a million other cape names that you just met. But yeah, I mean, isn't that so? I didn't look it up, but isn't that like basically Merlin, like a form of Merlin?
Yeah, it's a Welsh legend. I don't think it's exactly Merlin, but it's similar. It's he went crazy. He saw prophecies and went crazy and had magic powers. So
okay. Yeah, and Myrddin apparently is one of the capes that like, and we saw like a hint of this with Glass de Gwenye, where she sees her powers as magic, and Myrddin sees his powers as magic, and kind of treats them that way, and that's interesting.
Yeah, I love when he says "begone" when he he doesn't need to say anything, but he adds the little fun casting magic spell thing to it.
And like when he traces his staff around the air, you have to wonder if he even needs to do that at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, Kraus finds that he can't interact with him now because Myrddin has kind of like shunted him into a pocket dimension type thing.
Yeah, so I saw Dark Tower over the weekend, and one of the worst lines in this terrible movie was when Matthew McConaughey said, "You're resistant to my magics." And it's such a terrible line, and it's read terribly, but it's all I could think about watching this stuff. It's like, his damn magics. Yeah,
he's resistant. He's resistant to Myrddin's magics. So yeah, it does make you wonder, I think, knowing that Armsmaster has a bit of this Simurgh exposure, but supposedly not too much.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend another hour extrapolating that out and what kind of plan the Simurgh had for him, but it is interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so Kraus listens in, and I think there's an implication that he's not supposed to be able to hear this, but he listens in on their discussion with Dragon, and he doesn't know what the hell is going on, but we can actually follow it pretty well because we know these folks. Even when Myrddin gives Dragon a really hard time for just following orders, we know that Dragon is compelled to follow orders, and we kind of sympathize with her. Kraus follows them to a particular location that Dragon has marked, and it's a section of a cauldron building, I guess, teleported in.
Yeah, there's lots of really interesting flavor stuff learned here. We learn about that DDID protocol, which we learn about in a few chapters. That's absolutely insane. We learned that Arnsmaster was a dick before we knew him as a dick. And then, yeah, more information about what's going on with the Simurgh, how they're so concerned with minimizing exposure, how they don't even acknowledge Kraus, and they want to get away from him as soon as possible and get out.
Yeah, right. And where something that we don't really understand why this is the case yet, but for example, if she's answering questions for us, we don't want to know, Myrddin said, and we don't get why there's this paranoia and this sense of wanting to quarantine yet, but it's very evocative.
Yeah, so much of this arc is played like a mystery novel, kind of. It just all these mysteries waiting to be solved, and we keep getting these hints, and here's another big hint for it, and we know when they say she, they're talking about the Simurgh. And it's not hard to see that this, when they're talking about this section of the room that they found, that maybe this wasn't meant for them, was it? It was meant for someone else.
Yep. That's and that someone else has no trouble finding it. Yeah. So we get another flashback. Again, a great transition because Kraus is thinking to himself, "I don't understand." Which we assume refers to the fact that physics don't apply to him in any kind of logical way right now because of the dimensional stuff Myrddin did. But it also opens up the flashback because in the flashback, Noelle is breaking up with him and he convinces her not to. Pro tip, never do that.
Yeah, I've never known a relationship where you convince someone to not break up with you and it goes well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this whole scene is really, we see Kraus at his most manipulative that we've seen so far. And again, I don't think he's conscious of it.
Yeah, totally. He's almost, it's self-protective. It's reactive. And that doesn't excuse it so much as it's just again, it's a character flaw. It's not evil.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So he's like you said, he's weaseling his way around her arguments, and when she says don't do that, he thinks he spread his arms for the second time in a minute, helpless. Do what? Don't do what? Don't make sense. And I like this like we just said, this moment of confirmation that he isn't really manipulative on purpose. He just can't help himself.
Yeah, he's just, like we said, persistent, and he knows what he wants, and he wants that thing, and he really. No is not an answer he really listens to. And it's funny because before we even knew about Kraus and we knew about this whole thing, this is something that we have seen in Trickster. We have seen him behave like this before. And I like that we're kind of coming full circle on this.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, it's always kind of obvious to us and to Kraus that there's something up with Noelle. But she'll never say what it is, and Kraus is intent on acting like it doesn't matter, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think this is the real danger of the idea of putting someone on a pedestal like this, because Kraus is obsessed with Noelle, but he never really sees her. I mean, not really. You could almost argue that her breakup here is almost a cry for help, that she says, I'm miserable, I hate myself, and I need to fix that in myself. I need to deal with that. And Kraus acknowledges that there's something wrong with her, that there's something going on that she's not telling him. But that pedestal she's on prevents him from actually being concerned about it. He just tells her, I think you're fantastic. But she's not, Matt. She's definitely not. She's got some sort of disorder.
Yeah, she's saying this isn't working I'm not happy with this. And he's saying basically, yes, you are, which is not an argument. But he pushes it through so hard. I mean, she is right. They actually kind of make each other miserable. Like he's miserable here. Especially where he says, okay, if you think that's for the best, but I just need you to do one thing. Look me in the eyes. You tell me that.
That's awful. That's awful.
Yeah.
He's so manipulative here, isn't he? Like,
yeah.
Like he even like pulls in Marissa and is like, Marissa says you're happier than you've ever been. And then he goes like, I'll leave the team if you want. Like I'll break up the team.
Yeah.
And then makes her like look into his eyes and then starts talking about how, look, this is just a bad day. Don't let one bad day ruin everything. And it's like, you're not listening to her. You're not like, you're in total self-preservation mode. He's like desperate to just stop her in any way possible. And yeah, I think we've said it again. It's not conscious. I don't think he's fully aware that he's like manipulating her. He's just in desperation mode.
Yeah, he's definitely driven by fear a lot, and this is something that I'm going to want to bring up again later. I'm sure, but like the Travelers don't have classical trigger events because they don't have natural triggers, or however you want to phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
But they all do have pathologies or deep character flaws that are basically serve the same function of like the calcified trauma that continues to drive them after they become a cape. And this is a very clean representation of like what it is about Trickster that makes him screwed up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important that we recognize that, but then also, yes, say that if there is a group of people out there that say that Trickster's just an asshole that's bad, I think that's really selling him short here, because I think you're absolutely right that he is a flawed character that has a problem, and it will lead to a ton of problems, but he is not evil. Like he is doing what he thinks is best, and he's just wrong a lot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so the flashback ends, and Kraus looks at the segment of building, and it looks like a doctor's office superficially, so he figures he can find some medical supplies, so he climbs up into it. But all he finds is a lousy briefcase full of incredible superpowers, which he takes, of course, and it contains only 6 canisters, Scott. And I think at this point, I actually stopped reading, and I mentally tallied up how many people there were in their party.
Yeah, I did the exact same. And I think the natural conclusion when you do that is to realize that this Kraus-Cody conflict of who's in the team, who's not in the team, will once again rear its head when it comes to, we have a limited number of canisters and a certain amount of people. And it doesn't quite play off like that, does it?
Nope.
And we'll get into that in a bit.
I think I may have briefly wondered if like we would get a switcheroo and one of them would naturally trigger. And then that would be the surprise, but that didn't happen.
Part of me, I guess, once I realized they were from a different Earth where that was so much rarer, I just assumed that wasn't even a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, you turn out to be right. So yeah. We move into 17.5, and Kraus has made his way back toward the house they're all holding up in, and he runs into Cody on the way back. And Cody is creepily leaning against the wall, tapping his crowbar and acting antagonistic again. And it turns out Cody is getting the flashbacks too, but his are all about Kraus. And really, as he goes over the memories that he's sharing, Kraus is pretty hateable from Cody's point of view.
Yeah.
But Cody's attitude isn't exactly productive either, because he says, "Funny thing is, I'd rather see her. I'd rather see her win than see you come out as the hero here." Her being the Simurgh. Yeah,
that's fucked up, Cody.
Yeah,
that's really fucked up. But this is really revealing too. Like you said, he's been screwing with Cody a lot. He hurt his perception both on the team and amongst fans by making him late, even if it was a practice match. And like again, it feels like he's trying to get a spot on this team. He's trying to manipulate it to where he looks better. And like we said, it's easy to hate Cody. It's very easy, especially as things move along. But we can't pretend that Kraus is completely innocent in all this.
Yeah, I mean, Cody's still like in this moment where he just got betrayed and kicked off the team by all of his friends, even though Krause is like, hey, don't be childish. It's like, that's kind of where Cody is, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do learn from Cody as they're heading back that all the other team members are pretty much falling apart.
Yeah, almost as if the Seamerg is intentionally making it so they have to rely on Krause, who simultaneously is being shown Noelle memories in order to encourage him to keep moving forward.
Yep, almost. So yeah, I enjoy this beat where Krause remarks that the monsters just seemed like confused people who didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, that's especially ironic considering he's the one that fucking charged them with the spear.
Right, and tried to brutally kill them. I mean, yeah, and he's right. I mean, it's an interesting moment. So yeah, Marissa starts working on Krause's damaged hand, and Cody hands the briefcase to Jess. She immediately says to destroy it.
Yeah, and again, this is another hint that Jess is hiding something big. Something really big if you want to destroy superpowers.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, Krause acts like the case of powers would serve as a weapon like any other, but Jess points out that it's permanent. And then Luke picks up from their back and forth that something else is going on, but they convince him not to pry. Krause worms his way into convincing Jess to just hand over the papers so they can look over them. And as I look at the papers, I find out that you're supposed to have passed physical and psychological tests before taking the vials, which we knew from Battery. And their current situation seems pretty far from ideal.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So Jess is finally pushed to explain why this is a really bad idea, and she finishes the story of Lausanne. So 6 months after the Simmerg left, things started to go wrong for people in all new ways. Terrorism, suicide, violence, chains of cause and effect leading to disaster. And this is what happens everywhere she goes. A burst of chaos when she arrives and the heroes fight her off, followed months later by people snapping and turning into monsters like Mannequin. And she basically turns people into guided missiles.
Yeah, and here it is. Here's another one of our mystery solved. And like we've been discussing cause and effect all throughout the arc, how one choice chains to something else to an effect, and it changes something else into something else. And the Seamerg almost represents like the ultimate realization of that cause and effect chain, but not quite, because she is in a place where she knows the effects beforehand and can push decisions to a certain thing. So the Travelers being here, opening the portal to the Cauldron dimension, Krause encountering the Case 53s, which led him to the heroes, which led him to the vials. All of this, all of it could be just the Seamerg manipulating them. And we're now moved from just cause and effect to this like kind of ultimate free will versus destiny paradigm. And Luke kind of demonstrates that in what he says next.
Yeah, Luke shook his head. But you can't. If you think that way, then there's no action we could take that she wouldn't have predicted and nudged so that it leads to the worst case scenario. And at which point I invite you to remember the GIF of Sam Neill laughing in the Mountains of Madness. Yeah, so like Luke is right. I mean, if you're a walking time bomb, you're a walking time bomb. But if you're a walking time bomb who can, I don't know, create a small sun or turn a car into a bullet, it's going to be worse than if you were just a normal person who had some bad intent.
Yeah, but this is where we get into this free will versus fate thing, right? Because if the Seamerg really knows the outcome of all this and has pushed everyone towards that outcome, weren't they always going to take the vials? Wasn't that always going to happen? Wasn't Noelle always going to end up the way she is? Wasn't all of this just to get us to the point where an enraged Noelle is rampaging across Brockton Bay and our characters are going to have to fight her? Like, how much choice did our characters actually have in this? And I think that's what the arc as a whole is exploring.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I think it was many arcs ago that we had kind of a little interlude where we were talking about the nature of free will or the illusory nature of free will. It's in this arc more than any other that it's clear that free will is an illusion, particularly for these characters, because the situation was set up such that they would make the decision that the Seamerg wants them to. Basically, like the parameters were just too well constrained, and even Krauss is aware that is the case as he's making the decisions that we're about to get to. He's like, later on when he's saying "well played, Simurg," it's like he knows that he's being manipulated into this, but he's doing it anyway because he can't live with the other options.
Yeah.
So just as Jess emphasizes that the aftermath is where Simurg is the worst. The song fades, and now we're in the aftermath. And Jess starts to sob.
What a perfect moment of bad timing, isn't?
Yep.
Our narrative's fun. You can just line stuff up like this to land with the best impact because you control the world. It's fun. Yeah.
And then of course we see the side of Krauss that is generally genuinely admirable, because he does all that he can for his friend. He makes this wisecrack.
Yeah, and I love Krauss so much in this moment. It's really easy to shit on him, and we've been doing it, but he is the tragic hero of the story. He's the one making these decisions, but he's just a kid pulled into another world trying to do the best he can for the people he cares about. That's who he is. And it's sad. Yeah,
totally sad. Yeah. We enter 17.6. In the kitchen, he and Jess discuss when they should tell the others that they're all aliens now. The power is back on, and somebody turns on the TV, so their hands are forced in that matter. Krauss takes all the blame, though, acting as though it was him who convinced her to keep quiet about it.
Yeah, that's pretty noble of him. We're seeing this trend among him that he's starting to. He doesn't care what people think of him. He doesn't care if people hate him anymore. As long as he can protect Noelle. This is this transition to this now where like he's gonna be willing to do anything as long as it's for her.
Yeah, right. It is the first hint of that status quo where he's kind of like keeping the team together just by having someone to hate, I guess.
Yeah.
So Cody attacks him out of anger and punches him, but Krauss kicks him off, and the fight doesn't really escalate beyond that.
Yeah, and I think this kind of ties into what the Simurg was doing to each of them individually. Cody was being egged on to force this conflict, but Krauss was shown different things, to almost kind of focus him. And so Krauss in this moment is able to calm down and not escalate the attack further and send things crazy because he's focused on his goal, and the Simurg kind of helped him focus.
Yeah, right. She's keeping it at a simmer until it needs to be at a boil. That's great, yeah. So they learned from TV that the plan is to build a permanent blockade around Madison. A local hospital inside the city will serve those still stuck in there. And we get verification that the Simurg copied Professor Haywire's technology.
Man, so it can... it sees the future, it can move stuff with its mind, it can create cause and effect chains, and it can borrow other powers to do stuff.
Yeah, either that or it can just copy things that it finds, and because I don't know if we're supposed to take Jess at her word, but Jess says that she's not a tinker, so that implies that she's just copying. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to be sure of at this point.
Yeah.
So Krauss and Marissa look for a car together, and he asks her as they're walking what memories the Simurg showed her. Basically, he's trying to understand the Endbringer's approach. And she finally tells him that the Simurg showed her a time when she had bucked off her mother's presence and influence, and then consequently embarrassed herself on stage. And her mom had smiled at her failure, basically, knowing that she would kind of come crawling back. And she says, "That smile, that was what the Simurg showed me, except it lingered. Couldn't shake it, almost as if the Simurg was doing it and not my mom." So
it's so good.
So this all kind of leads Krauss to guess that the Simurg's plan, whatever it is imminent.
Yeah, and this is when Krauss really starts to make a lot of assumptions based off of very incomplete information. I think, and I think we'll get into this later, but I think he almost uses the predestination type stuff to justify the choices he's making, because he can say this was always going to happen anyway, so I might as well do it. Yeah,
right. I think you're right, and that's that in itself plays into her hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marissa really is opening up a bit here. And sorry to tip the reveal early, but it's easy to forget that we're seeing into the head of the girl who refused to kill Lung when she had the chance, and who hesitated to kill members of the Nine when she had the chance, who consistently flinches away from using her power at all. And even here, she's lonely already.
Yeah, and it's the Seamer, right? It's that one time she showed strength, that one time she stood up to her mom. A bad thing happened to her, and it was reinforced like times a million on her, and almost as if to beat into her. Don't find your strength, be weak, back off, trust in the judgment of other people. Don't be your own person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically just being undermined. So ultimately, the two of them break into a hotel and they grab some credit cards and some keys. And Krause realizes after they obtain a car that Cody has returned to the house to take one of the cauldron vials while nobody's paying attention. So he rushes back, but Cody can't find the vial, and he lies and tells Cody that they destroyed the vials.
Cody, you dick.
Yeah. And then Krause is thinking she wanted this. She wanted Luke and Noelle and Oliver to be distracted. That's why she made them remember the things they did. She wanted you to hate me, and I think she wanted me to go just a little too far.
Yeah, and I think the interesting point here is that Krause says that he wants to talk to Luke to find out what Luke saw, but he didn't get to yet. So he doesn't actually know what Luke, Noelle, and Oliver saw in their visions. He knows Marissa's. That's the only person he knows. So he's jumping to a lot of conclusions here in his desperation. He's kind of warped everything to be all about him. And in doing so, it kind of masks the bigger picture from him, that this was never really about him, that he was just a tool, and it was always, always, always about Noelle.
Yeah, so, within the frame of what we're shown here, if he's a guided missile, he's a guided missile whose main purpose is to get Noelle to take her vial.
Yeah.
Like, he's totally being manipulated, but he assumes that whatever the nightmare thing that happens due to the Sumer's influence is going to be, that it's going to be through him, and it that's only true in an instrumental sense.
Right.
Yeah. So they drive Noelle to the hospital and wait to be processed by Dragon's AI. Nurses come and take Noelle, and the AI explains to Krause how difficult it's going to be to ever get out of here. 10 months of constant checkups, a tattoo, permission required to do pretty much anything, notification of employers, notification of renters. And then when the AI asks for information from his bank, he realizes that he has no identity even in this world. And the process won't even begin until they can provide some form of identification, which they don't have and can't fake. So in short, there is no way out for these guys.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think there's a certain argument that you can make here as we learn what these DDID terrible, awfully cruel parameters are. That the idea of this thing influencing your free will and the reaction you have to it in your overzealous attempt to control that is possibly, in fact, propagating the very thing that you're trying to prevent. That these eternal, all-knowing influences on cause and effect, it's really tough to say what is affecting what, and what part of what you're doing is just part of the plan and what part of it isn't. But regardless, we see this solution to the Seamer that's almost like barbaric, that like these people have to be tattooed and like basically they have to tell anyone anywhere whenever they do something that they were under this influence forever.
Yeah, which would, like you said, I mean, this is all more Sam Neill laughing.gif, because it's like you can't quarantine cause and effect. Like, for all you know, the therapist who they're talking to in their tri-weekly therapy session is like the person who they're conveying some specific messaging to, and then that person is going to go do some horrible thing. Like it's really almost, I mean, I don't know, like the only thing that makes it even slightly credible to me is the idea that like the PRT has like, thinker capes who could potentially be like, look, we have some special insight into the way the Simmer does this, and using our powers, we can say that this will work. But we're not given any reason to believe that's true within the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It just seems like a desperate attempt to control something that you have no control over, which is kind of what fate is.
Right.
And it's kind of what this whole conflict between free will and fate are.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, in this moment of Krauss realizing that there's no way out of this, the doctor returns to tell them how bad off Noelle is. At best, she'll have to wear a colostomy bag for the rest of her life, and she could still very well die. So Krauss responds to these factors by racing back to the house, and he grabs the canisters from where he hid them under the couch. He looks them over. He sees the Deus, Jaunt, Prince / Aegis, Vestige, Division, and Robin. And he figures a jaunt is a short trip, so that will do. And he toasts the simmer before drinking it.
And then, of course, this is where we see what his true plan was all along. And I like that, like, we were set up to think that this was all about this Krauss-Cody conflict, right? That what we were being led to was Krauss going too far and doing something to Cody that this antagonizing relationship. But no, that wasn't it. It was about this. It was about getting Krauss here to this moment where he makes this decision in desperation to try to save Noelle, who he's obsessed with, and he can't lose. He can't do it. And of course, he makes the decision. Yep.
And he has the vision. Crystals living a pair, moving together. Creatures folding and unfolding through space across multiple worlds, falling toward a barren planet. No water, but still Earth somehow.
Matt, I said I was done speculating on this stuff, and I fucking meant it. Let's move on.
Very, very well. So Krauss seems almost blasé about his new power, like it's just not his priority. But he does kind of use it a couple times to test it out. So he perceives it as like pressures balancing between objects, and then like a vibrating cord between them will kind of manifest in his perception when they're balanced, and then that allows him to swap those things. So he gets the hang of it quickly, and then he almost immediately we see that he's pretty like intuitively clever with it.
Yeah, I really do enjoy just how Wildbow describes the power. Like the perception that he has, it's very cool, but it has a certain logic to it as well. Like, I can't imagine how else you'd explain this power with words. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. And so his friends kind of chase him back here and see that he's done this, and he's kind of confessing to them. He says, I know this is shitty, Krauss admitted, but my excuses, my reasons for doing it, maybe they don't make up for what I'm doing. But I'm okay with you guys hating me if it means helping Noelle, which to me just echoes, I was doing this for Dinah.
Oh yeah, remember that Taylor girl?
Yep.
Isn't this story still about her? I do think that you pointing this out here is absolutely spot on, though, because just like Taylor, Krauss's primary motivation here is all about Noelle, and because he's like a shark looking straight ahead, blind to everything else that's happening, and because like he's just heading headlong into this thing that is going to doom them. And I think it's intentional that this is taking place now in this part of the story where we've paused Taylor's story at this moment where she made a choice. She killed Coyle, and now we're about to see the horrific consequence of that thing, and how these two consequences are so tightly wound to each other. And like it's such a good way to take this self-contained traveler's arc and then spread it out into our narrative proper as well.
Yeah, it's a tangent I don't know if we need to go into, but you can almost wonder if like the Simmer had some hand in killing Coyle, even because that serves her plans too.
Oh yeah, you can almost wonder it. If only there was some way to symbolically show that at the end of the arc.
Right. I wonder. I don't know. Scott will have to just see. So he Trickster traps their car in the driveway with his power, and then he drives his car to the hospital with a vial for Noelle. So he goes up to her room and he offers her the vial, which she doesn't want to take, but he convinces her to take it, or half of it anyway. Stop listening to this boy, Noelle.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah. Also, I just love your tweet here. Oh no, don't take half. Definitely don't take half. Oliver sucks. Don't give him any. Don't take half. That just made me laugh.
That was very stream of consciousness tweeting. Like I was typing that literally as I read. And it's funny because like we took the little tiny beat to have Skidmark warn us very explicitly that when someone asks, can't we just split it up? And he's like, no, that would be really bad.
Yeah, right. That's one of many moments that you really enjoy on read-throughs.
Yeah. So before we move on, I do want to stop here and talk about the vials for a bit, because we know we have 6 for 7 people. We realized that as soon as we found them, and we know that this easily represents that choice that the whole arc started with, where we have 5 spots on this team and 6 people eligible for them, and it seems kind of obvious that we're going to leave Cody out in the cold again with this, because that just seems like it rhymes. Those two beats match each other kind of, but we don't do that. We set up this choice to mirror that previous one, and then we subvert it. And this kind of makes me think that decision to vote out Cody kind of pushed Noelle. Noelle, I don't think she was fully okay with that. It makes me think that she was kind of pushed into that a little bit. So here, when she's given a similar option, she votes not to exclude anyone. She votes to take the risk onto herself by splitting this in half. And of course, she has no way of knowing what the consequences of the decision will be. She does it anyway. And I think Wildbow, by subverting our expectations here, he's taken a story to which we thought we already knew the ending, and then he kind of tosses it all up into the air again. And again, to hit my previous beat, this is how you make a prequel interesting. This is how you take and you use information that people have to confuse and subvert their expectations. You think you know what the way things are going to go. You think you know how this is going to all play out, but you subvert that a little bit, and it's really, really good.
Yeah, I like this idea. You just pointed out that maybe Noelle is like, she's like kind of maybe inside herself is like, no, I've learned my lesson. I'm not gonna exclude anyone. But she ends up making a much worse mistake in trying to avoid her previous mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, this all ends poetically with Krause thinking to himself, I'll take the blame. I'm okay with being the bad guy, he thought, just so long as you get to live. And of course, Noelle does get to live. And Krause thinks he knows what the consequences here are, just that him being the bad guy, everyone being mad at him. But it's so much worse than that.
Right. Yeah. He makes the sacrifice because he assumes it's his sacrifice to make.
Yep.
And it's not. So yeah, we move into 17.7, and it's immediately obvious that Noelle's powers aren't taking hold as easily as Krause's did. A guard tries to get into the room in response to her screams, and the uniform eventually barges in, and Krause is distracted by the trigger vision, which starts and stops erratically. We've never seen a trigger vision or trigger event drag on like this before.
Yep, and there's a whole bunch of juicy information in this vision, but I'm done, Matt. It's all hallucinatory nonsense. I'm just going to wait until the story tells me what it is.
Fair enough. So Scott has to wrestle the much stronger PRT officer.
No, I don't. I don't have to wrestle it.
Let me try that again. Krause has to wrestle the much stronger PRT officer who is armed and eventually figures out the shape doesn't matter to his power so much as the mass. So he switches the man's gun with Noelle's blanket, and he ends up holding the gun, and then he uses it to violently bash the guy's face in.
Yeah, I do really like these small beats of people figuring out their powers. Wildbow writes them all very well, and I think the blanket gun moment is pretty great in that. There's also a lot of beats where Trickster realizes he has to change his mass, so he sucks in air or breathes out a bunch of air to get masses matching closer together. It's pretty great touch.
Yeah, it makes sense too. Air is kind of heavy, actually. So eventually Noelle's trigger event completes, and she seems a bit better. She feels her skin fizzing, but other than that, she can't tell if she has powers.
Yeah, and we really start playing with audience expectation here, because we all know that whatever's wrong with Noelle, something is going to go wrong really soon. We have no idea exactly how or when or in what way, so we're just kind of waiting. So this causes us to pay close attention to every little bit of information about what's happening to her. And so fizzing skin? Oh God, what does that mean? and it's really cool.
Right. And we've never seen or given any understanding of what she becomes. So we're just like, okay, well, how does that relate to the thing that we see later?
Yeah.
So Krauss looks out the window and he sees Murden and his team and a ton of PRT troopers. And he verifies that he can use his power on people outside the window by swapping a couple of random PRT guys. But Murden and his team quickly fly up to the window and smash through it.
Yeah, I can't help but think about those two PRT soldiers just hanging out on opposite sides of the parking lot, only to find themselves magically in a different place for no reason. And it's like they don't even know what's going on at this point. No one's seen Trickster or his power, so they don't know what to expect. So can you imagine just like being at work and then you're across the office and you just don't know how that happened?
Yeah,
poor guys.
I was actually thinking about this when I was downtown today. I was like, that was Trickster, and I just wanted to like hop across the city real fast. I would leave a lot of really disoriented people behind me.
Yep.
Yeah. I like this moment of Murden looked at Noelle, then at Krauss. So there's two of you. One of us, two bodies, Krauss said. This is just so great. So Trickster.
Yeah, it's total nonsense. And of course, I loved it because I immediately starting to like read stuff into it and like try to figure out what's he trying to say here. And I did this for like 5 minutes before I was just like, Scott, you got to stop. This is just Trickster being Trickster.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly works on Murden. Then the other cape, one of the other capes, Anomaly, tries to grab them with some kind of black hole suction power, but Krauss quickly turns the tables on them, swapping people strategically to use their own powers against them and move himself and Noelle to the window. So this results in Noelle appearing to cut her hand on the broken glass. And once he can easily see out the window, he swaps himself and Noelle outside, and then he swaps both of them into a police car, which they steal. So as they drive away, he realizes that Noelle's hand is uninjured by the broken glass.
Yeah, and like I said before, we're studying Noelle through every paragraph, every word, waiting for a hint of when she's going to go wrong. So yeah, we see this uninjured hand, and it stands out a lot to us. And we're like, okay, fizzy skin, can't be hurt. What is going on?
Yeah. So they return to the rest of the group, and Luke is really angry at Krauss for what he's done, and he's kind of done with Krauss's excuses and justifications.
Yeah, I really like this because the thing we have to remember is that Luke defended Krauss when Cody went apeshit about destroying the vials. He said, I didn't like that he did it, but I understand his point. And here, Krauss has basically just done the exact same thing that Cody wanted to do. He just decided on his own that he's going to drink this without consulting anyone else. And it's a betrayal. And I understand why Luke is so mad at him. And this kind of starts sowing those seeds that end their story with Ballistic deciding to leave his friends and say, I'm done with this. And in that moment with Coil to walk over to the Undersiders side.
Yeah. I think that is kind of the moment where Luke starts to diverge from him and kind of almost not be his friend anymore.
Yeah. And this and everything we're going to see from here on out in this chapter, I think really does show us the two sides of the idea of fate and destiny, something we've been talking about a little bit before. On the one side, you feel like you've lost all choice and all freedom, that you are not responsible for your own life anymore. But on the other, it's like a get out of jail free card. You get to justify everything you do as part of this just pre-written fate. And that's kind of what Krauss does here. And that gets me thinking, maybe that's the most dangerous part about the Simurgh. It's not just the power itself, but when you have this knowledge of the existence of a fate-like thing in her presence, that this linking of chains is more freeing to make you think you can act in certain ways that you wouldn't before, because you feel like, well, I was always going to do this anyway.
Yeah, like is it better or worse to just surrender when you realize that you're like in the grip of a precog, basically, because you're gonna do the thing they intend you to do one way or the other. So it's a question of, are you gonna do it kicking and screaming, or are you just gonna be resigned? And I think different people might have different answers to that.
Well, and it's like it's such a complicated thing, right? Because there's this intersect of like even with a precog, even with knowledge of what happens, does that by itself remove the choice? Is the Simurgh really basically creating fate? Is she really forcing you into this certain path, or is she just pushing things together and you still have the choices to make on your own? And are you making those choices consciously because you think you don't really have a choice, even though you do? Like, and it's really complicated, and I like how we're kind of wrestling with this here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, on some level, it comes down to like how strong she is, which, and we don't know at all how strong she is. We're given to suspect that she's pretty good, but you'd think that if she were like immaculately good, then like there would be no limit to what she could do in a sense.
Right.
And, yeah. So at this point, Cody enters swaggering, and Kraus is suddenly disoriented. And it's interesting because as we begin to understand, Cody's power is quite different from Kraus's, but the impact on the target has got to feel similar. Everything shifts around you. You're disoriented. In both cases, their powers can control and play with people's bodies. You could even say that they're both a form of teleportation even.
Yeah, and Cody even confidently says that his is the perfect counter to Kraus's, which is kind of true in a certain way.
Yeah. Then he says the only bad part is, shaking his hand as if it were sore, if I use it on myself, I don't get the satisfaction. And if I use it on him, he doesn't even know. Which is kind of like an ironic twist to Cody's power too, because he doesn't even get like what he wants out of it.
Yeah.
So Cody seems to tire of beating up time looped Kraus after the others chastise him for it a bit. Noelle, though, is hungry, and Marissa, perplexed, leads her to the kitchen.
Perplexed, eh? Almost as if... No, I'm gonna wait till my speculation.
So Cody resumes messing with Kraus with his power again, and Kraus responds this time by immediately attacking Cody, realizing that he can perform the same attack on Cody over and over, because when Cody time loops himself, he forgets what he already tried. And he says, your power works against you. Using it to protect yourself, it doesn't work if your opponent knows how you function, and you don't have a backup to break the loop. You shift yourself back in time, you don't remember, and I can use the same strategy over and over. And yeah, that's true, Kraus. But Cody's power is actually really, really nice if he has backup, which he would have if he wasn't a jerk, ironically.
Yeah, almost as if Kraus has like ideas and imagination and strategy when it comes to his power, and Cody has like a pretty short ceiling. He can work hard at his power and get better and better, but he can't really think long term and strategic about it. Almost as if he's bad at video games.
Yeah, that's I think that's a definite parallel there. Yeah, so Kraus does cross a line here, where he points out that now that Cody has a power, the only way that Kraus can really like win a fight with him is by killing him, which is a little bit chilling. So that theme of the Traveler's powers all being too lethal is actually serving to kind of limit their options in another way here. Maybe a different slant than the one that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I like that, and I really do think more than anything it's just an excuse, but I do like it. It also helps to kind of set up this decision that Kraus is going to make later in the next chapter, and how like casually he makes it. So we're getting some clever setup here that Kraus is willing freely to cross this line if he feels like he has to.
Yeah. So Kraus asks the others if they plan to take vials too. Luke thinks that he might as well now, and Kraus seems to convince Jess to do so by pointing out that it could potentially heal her.
Yeah, let's just double down on the bad decisions here, guys. Let's totally forget about the reason we didn't want to take these in the first place, which was that they're all guided missiles, and now they'll be guided missiles with possibly their own guided missiles.
Yeah, that's good. So Kraus seems to be totally convinced that he's the only one the Simurgh was focusing on, and that he's the guided missile, as we talked about before. And while this is obviously egocentric, it's interesting. I thought kind of while reading that this made sense based on the information at his disposal, and I was interested that you kind of pushed back on that, and I kind of changed my mind. But yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, first we're getting our real moment of hubris here, as if we're not banging that Greek tragedy drum enough. That he makes it all about him. He's like egotistical here and makes mistakes because he assumes that it's him. And yeah, like I did push back on you a little bit there, because I just think he's jumping to conclusions and he's making connections that aren't necessarily there. He's got a lot of assumptions. We haven't seen him talk to the rest of the team about what they were shown. We don't know if Noelle was shown anything, what she was shown. And we have him making a lot of assumptions. I always assumed, as soon as we figured out what the Seamer was doing, that their end target, the end missile, was always get Noelle to turn into monster thing.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I guess more what I was saying is like this Trickster thinking that it's all about him makes sense in his head, because nothing, like there's been no overt sign that anything is going to be up with Noelle at this point. So as far as he knows, it was focused on him. But like I said, he was a guided missile aimed at getting her to take the vial, which now his role is, while not done, he accomplished kind of the critical point that he needed to accomplish.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think now that I understand what you meant a little better, that I mean, he in the immediate aftermath, he seemingly like is justified in having that opinion, I guess. Yeah. But I think it's
still hubris, though. You're right about that. Yeah. So we cut forward a bit to the group driving away from Madison, having teleported past the fence. The powers are a disappointment all around. Jess can't walk, Luke can't fly, Marissa can't do much of anything yet. But later, as we'll see, Sundancer is pure destruction, and Oliver's power isn't obvious yet either.
Yeah, almost as if they just drank these powers that weren't really meant for them, and they weren't psychologically like prepared for them. They kind of like it's funny how we know how dangerous this whole thing was, like how often monsters are made from this, like how important like being psychologically steady is ready, how many tests go on, how they like align the power to the person. So it's not surprising here that things don't work out the way people wanted them to.
Yeah, exactly. And yet also we did kind of get the moment where this was like a case full of kind of the most high dollar vials that Cauldron makes. Yeah. So they do get really strong powers, and everyone is always commenting on like, well, the Travelers are an unusually strong group. Yeah. But like you said, they're very strong, but kind of as we've said many times, violent and one dimensional in some ways.
Yeah.
So they pull over at a rest stop, and inside, Noelle takes off her pants to go to the bathroom and finds a strange mark on her leg. Beneath the angry red skin on Noelle's thigh, there was an eyeball twice the normal size with a broad yellow iris. Noelle's hands were clenched into fists, gripping the cloth of her jeans as the eyes gazed darted from one member of their group to another. It settled on Krause. Accusatory.
I love this so much. This is awesome. The leg eyeball looked at him accusatory. Yeah. How poetic. I love it. I love it. There's I mean, it's funny, like I haven't actually read that much Stephen King, but a lot of the stuff strikes me as Stephen King like in the best way. I don't know if you agree. You're more of a Stephen King. As the resident Daily Planet production Stephen King expert. Yes. Yes, okay. Very much so.
Yeah. All right, so we move into 17.8, and we've skipped forward in time somewhat significantly, and now we're with Trickster, no longer Krause. Trickster.
Yeah, so before we go on, I wanted to talk about this time jump really quick, and how jumping time in general is a very clever way of, again, masking stuff that we don't want the audience to see yet. Because we see the start of Noelle, but Wild Bill wants to hold on to that full reveal until the very end of the chapter. He wants it to end on this beat of fully realizing what Noelle is now. So he holds and he holds and he holds on to it until that end. And this time jump kind of makes that possible. So it's a very clever way of getting around the problem that we talk about a lot on here, which is how do you successfully reveal things in ways that feel organic and natural, and not that you're just doing it for the sake of the story.
Yeah, I also think that the time jump serves some other purposes. Like, for example, the Trickster we see here, he behaves a lot more like the trickster that we know. This is like a bridge between this kid who we've come to know and the kind of dangerous and ruthless leader of the travelers who we know in the main storyline. Because he's definitely turned into that person by this point, and we see how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, he's waiting in an office, or in an office to meet with a supervillain called Accord, and he smokes while looking out onto the Boston of Earthbet. And for a few moments, we see this world almost for the first time. There's quite a bit of description. I like it, but the point here, how I just put it, this world was sublime, a world that was awesome in the truer sense of the word, greater in so many respects. In a metaphorical sense, the peaks were higher, the valleys lower, works of art more artful, extremes more extreme. It wasn't a good thing. Make the mountains twice as tall and the chasms twice as deep, and things start crumbling. So we've had descriptions of Brockton Bay before, obviously, but it's so powerful at this moment in the story to get this sense of contrast. This world, this whole world is not normal.
Yeah, and it's because here, for the first time in this whole book, we're seeing it from the point of view of someone who does not belong here. And you're right; it's wonderful. I'm glad you pulled out this verbiage, because it is poetic. It's make the mountains twice as tall and the chasms twice as deep, and things start crumbling. That's wonderful imagery, and it's this world is awful. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's crumbling. Yeah. So the villain Accord invites him in. So let's do name game, Scott. Accord, most obviously, as we'll see, to be harmonious or consistent with, but also to give or grant someone a thing, be it power, status, or recognition. So perhaps also this usage is applicable in this situation, because they're asking him to accord them recognition and status. Also, as a noun, accord is an official agreement or treaty, and an agreement is what they're asking for here. Trickster is almost the opposite in connotation. Tricksters cause chaos and discord.
Yeah, it's almost kind of surprising that Accord would even tolerate this guy being here based off of just his name.
Yeah, it does turn out through their conversation that Accord kind of likes him. So that's good for him, I guess. So yeah, as we begin to see, everything Accord does is precise, almost artistic, and perfect down to the tiniest details. So it turns out this is Accord's territory. So Trickster is asking for permission to commit some crimes, and it's all very, very civilized. Trickster will pay a fee and a percentage of the take, but Accord makes a counteroffer. He doesn't much care for Trickster's offer. He wants the travelers to steal some Tinker equipment from the Biotinker Blasto.
Tinkers are so bad at their names.
I know. So Accord, though, will sweeten the deal with the payment, and will also create some costumes for the travelers as part of the payment, which Trickster suspects is really just Accord kind of wanting to impose order on the world and make things neater. And he thinks Accord was a thinker, and the running theory on his power was that he got naturally smarter as the problems he was addressing got more complex. It gave him an intuitive understanding of groupthink, politics, and convoluted designs.
Yeah, Accord's a really interesting character to me, and especially as he represents, we just got this whole passage about how the world was crumbling, how that things weren't normal and everything was kind of falling apart, and this really interesting observation by Krauss. And then we have this character in Accord who is seemingly obsessed with order and normalcy and calmness, and he's living in this world that is falling apart. And it's very I like that contrast. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, there's another thing about this situation that I want to draw attention to, which is that so in Brockton Bay, the guy who steadily took control of the city was basically, you'd classify him as a thinker. I'm pretty sure. I think you classify precogs as thinkers, and of course the girl who defeats him and kind of, at least for the moment, has taken over his empire was also a thinker, and I'm talking about Tattletale here. And of course, the guy who it seems is in charge of the Boston villain cape scene is a thinker. So I like this. This is something that I've heard people say is like their favorite thing about Worm is like, well, of course, if you have cognitive powers, those are going to like put you in a better position than strength or whatever. And I like this observation that Accord is in this position of power here. Yeah. So in the middle of their meeting, though, Sundancer barges in with an emergency. Trickster kicks her out and tries to calm down Accord, who rescinds all of the goodies that came with the offer and adds that Sundancer will now have to die because she's a force of disorder, he says, and Trickster is better off rid of her. Trickster bargains that Sundancer can show herself to be a force of order, and Accord gives her 10 minutes to prepare to do so.
Yeah, so I had to reread this part several times because the first time I read it, I really, really didn't like it. It felt so weird and like so out of left field, so like comic book villainy that I almost felt like I was not reading Worm anymore, that I was reading another book. The idea that barging into someone's office being met with like immediate death was so illogical, like a bad guy in a James Bond flick or something. Like, why would you ever want to work for someone who could be set off this easily? He'd just be killing people constantly. But before everyone jumps down my back, I read it a few more times and I kind of like it more now. As we were talking about before, Accord represents order in this world that's like succumbing to chaos. And because of the world that Earthbed is, he really can't afford to be flexible if he wants to try to maintain order. And then plus that combined with just the fact that he has this thinker superpower means that even if he is killing subordinates on a daily basis, he still has this power to amass power and wealth anyway. So this isn't just Blofeld. This is Blofeld with superpowers. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I think one kind of lens that I take on it is that like Lung was also kind of this like wasteful kind of monster in terms of how he was a leader. He led through violence. People followed him out of fear, and we don't know this, but it could just be the case that all of this like civility and effeteness that's apparent in Accord is actually just a mask, and he's just as much an animal as Lung is. Yeah. But I don't know. We don't really know that. It's just like, It just hit. Like, I was just like, what? Like, that's so crazy. Like, even for the crazy shit that happens in this book, this is so crazy. Yeah. I think I had a reaction at that moment of like, just one thing after another for these guys. Like, now they have to deal with this. But I mean, they deal with this issue relatively quickly, and it all kind of works out. Yeah. So Trickster races outside and tells Sundancer what she has to do. She has to spruce herself up and then perform a ballet routine for him that she can do well. Yeah. Of course, the solution to this ridiculous problem is something equally ridiculous. Like, he's gonna murder you because you barged in on his meeting. So do a dance for him, and then he'll be okay. Yeah, right. Go ahead, sorry. Yeah, so only after communicating this to her does he finally worry about whatever the emergency was. He calls Oliver and learns that Cody touched Noelle 3 times, which is apparently terrifying, but we don't know why. Oh no, touching. That's bad. Noelle never liked to be touched, Matt. Remember? Yep. She never liked it. I hope that her power didn't turn that into some kind of horrifying consequence. No. So Trickster immediately starts searching for something, kind of swapping himself willy-nilly everywhere, and then he finds it. It's a naked, monstrous dude covered in tumorous growths, attacking anyone he runs into. And it's Cody. It's Perdition, but not quite. So Trickster saves a couple of children by getting the monster's attention, and we do see that even though this isn't really Cody, as we'll see later, it still hates Kraus personally. Yeah, hey Matt, perdition is defined as a state of eternal punishment and damnation. Names. Yeah. Yep. Poor Cody. Yeah. Yeah. So as Trickster's kind of thinking it through, he's thinking some of the time the powers would be different. Most of the time, going by precedent, they were stronger. Trickster was left to wonder how Perdition's powers had changed duration, range, the amount of time reversed. And eventually he figures it out, that it's basically that this version of Perdition doesn't need to see the target. He just kind of gets a lock on his target. So Trickster escapes this ultimately by doing some rapid sequence of swaps and then getting the drop on the creature and emptying a magazine into him.
So yeah, at this point, I didn't know that this was a copy, and just thought it was like touching Noelle mutates you weirdly. And then I was like, oh shit. I was like, no, he killed him way too casually. And that's when I started saying, all right, this must be a copy. And of course, as you learn this in the back of your mind is the fact that Noelle is out right now rampaging through the streets of Brockton Bay, and anyone that fights her and touches her will have a version of themselves to deal with, which is insane.
Yeah, but luckily there aren't a lot of strong capes in Brockton Bay.
No.
Yeah, so we skip forward, and Trickster drags the body into the traveler's apartment or house or whatever it is, where it joins two others. Yeah, so there's this moment here where Krauss is like thinking things over, and he's thinking they'd all been forced to deal with their individual tragedies. Noelle's went without saying. Jess hadn't gotten to walk. Luke hadn't gotten to fly. Oliver got a physical and mental overhaul without any fixes for the real problems. And Marissa had been thrust into the situation she'd fought so hard to escape, where she was forced to pursue a life she didn't want. And I just wanted to bring this out because I know you thought it was kind of like on the nose in terms of like verbalizing and making explicit kind of the themes of the arc, I guess. So I just wanted to get your reaction there. Yeah,
so that was my immediate reaction was, oh, Trickster's nicely summing up the themes of the arc for us in a very, very explicit manner. But then, I read it again as I was studying the arc, and it's not that at all, because Trickster is so wrong here. Like, Jess's tragedy in this moment is that she can't walk. Well, no, it's that she's stuck in this other place and she's alone. Like, she could never walk. Luke, that he can't fly, that was just like a casual thing that he thought about, but hey, it'd be fun if I could fly. Like, does Oliver even consider the things that Krauss thinks are his problems to be his problems? Like, we see so little of Oliver that we don't know if any of that's actually true. Like, I think the closest he gets is Marissa's, but like he's wrong. Like, here he's totally wrong, and it's like he's so focused on Noelle that he can't even see that, really. That he's still thinking about it's just like, oh, it's just Jess wanting to walk. It's just Luke wanting to fly, and he doesn't see it.
Yeah, and I'm just noticing right now that although maybe you can't blame him at this moment, but he doesn't even include Cody in his list of people who have had tragedies. And of course Cody has experienced a tragedy too. He's reacting to it horribly, but he's experienced a tragedy just as much as any of the rest of them have.
Right.
But he's just like not even human to Krauss at this point. Yeah, so we learned from their dialogue that there have been a number of incidents like this one, and a body count associated with each of them.
Yeah, and this is the reason why the travelers are traveling around the country, because they can't stay in a place for too long because incidents like this keep happening and they have to flee somewhere else.
Yep. So Marissa returns, Accord having decided that she was at least trying to be orderly and deciding not to kill her. But Accord is demanding that they turn over the real culprit behind the interruption, and he means Cody. And Krauss is pretty okay with that, actually, at this point, even though he's breaking the promise that they all rely on, the things that keeps the group together.
Yeah, it's such a casually made decision that, like, we're going to have to give him up today. Oh, well. And it echoes back to Cody's accusation earlier in the arc, right? That Krauss would be willing to put one or all of them in danger if it meant saving Noelle, and he absolutely would do that with Cody. I think he's expanded his definition of who he's willing to protect a little bit here to include the rest of the travelers, but I still think really it's just all about Noelle. But anyway, very clear that Cody's not part of that. He's just completely fine sentencing him to death here.
Yeah, right. And this shows that ruthlessness that we've come to see in Trickster.
Yeah. And I gotta say, at first I was very surprised that we don't get to see what happens to Cody. We end this arc before really seeing what they do with Cody. All we know is that he's not with the group anymore. Because it's the conflict between Cody and Kraus that kind of spurs on the arc. It's the first thing we started with. It's what we carried through the entire arc, and we don't ever really get to see that kind of resolution. And that's what I was thinking at first, but then the more I thought about it, like, the fact that we don't see Cody at all in this chapter, that he's just not present in this chapter outside of a mutated weird monster thing, is kind of a resolution on its own, because Cody was kicked out of the group at the beginning of the arc, and here at the end of the arc we see that this action carried over, that he is not part of this team, that he possibly never was, and that on its own is a form of resolution.
I don't think that he's missing from this chapter. I think it's appropriate he's not here, because we already finished his arc with Kraus. So Kraus sends Marissa to go get a ton of meat for Noelle, but first she hands him a phone number that she got from Accord, and he calls, and it's Coil, making them the offer and bringing everything closer to alignment with the present day. And really, we understand everything now. Coil promises employment. He promises to send them home to Earth Aleph. He promises to fix Noelle, or at least to try his best. And he promises them a causal shield from the Simurgh's influence.
Yeah, I really like seeing this all come full circle and seeing Coil position himself here. I know you can't answer this completely, Matt, but is what Coil is saying here true? Or, like, as far as the ability of other thinkers to mask the cause and effect nature of the Simurgh? Like, is this true, or is this just him bullshitting to try to influence them? Have we seen, like, a confirmation that this actually works this way?
Yeah, I don't think we have seen a confirmation. The closest, I don't know, I'm kind of grasping at straws here.
I know it's tough to say without spoiling anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, I don't even. I think that may even just be an open question. I don't know.
That's fair.
Because there almost has to be, like, a hierarchy. It's like in a world like this, you either have a power hierarchy of precogs where some of them are just strictly better than others, and like if precog A makes a prediction, precog B can't do anything to change that, even though they can see the future too, and precog A is stronger than precog B. Or you have a situation where they're all of similar level of power, so if two of them try to, like, game the same situation, and they just mess each other up, and we don't know which of those worlds we're in right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So finally Trickster visits Noelle, and we don't get to see her at first. We just see that the room is completely trashed, and she laments that she thinks she's becoming an Endbringer.
Scott was right. Boom, got it. No, she just thinks. We don't actually know.
Thinks that. Yeah. Who knows, though? So he tells her what Coil offered, and after arcs and arcs of build-up, we finally see Noelle. From the waist up, it's Noelle. From the waist down, she's a giant monster of twisted flesh with animal heads jutting from it, multiple limbs, hooves, hands, tentacles. She doesn't expel waste, she only adds the mass of what she eats to herself. And she's always hungry. And if she doesn't eat, she goes on a rampage.
Yeah, wow, I gotta say, I was expecting things not to look quite like this. I even kind of have a difficulty picturing exactly what this looks like. I'm just kind of imagining, like, normal top, crazy Final Fantasy end boss bottom, and I feel like that's enough for now.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, if I actually, like, render it in my head, I'm almost just seeing, like, a massive, like, slimy shapes underneath her, because I don't have the compute power to render all those individual limbs in my head.
Yeah.
So having told her this good news that Coil is going to save them, we skip forward again, and now suddenly Trickster is waking up on the beach, and he finds the spot where The seagulls have clustered, the red stain on the pavement. Another wave crashed against the beach. He heard the seagulls cawing angrily, wanting the morsels that littered the ground in front of him. Kraus spent a very long time staring at the stain.
Hey, Matt. There's birds. You see the birds?
Is it white flapping wings, just like the cockatoo?
Yeah, it's just some white flapping wings. Yeah. No, and this is like, I think this is so important. And you know, we talk about 3 beats a lot, and I think we try to stretch them in some ways when we're trying to look for them when they might not necessarily be there. But this feels intentional. This specific bird image we're seeing repeated again and again and again throughout this arc. And here it comes full circle at the end where we see Coil's dead. Their hope, the traveler's hope, is gone, and Noelle is loose. And now this is it. This is where everything was leading. This is where the Simurgh's plan was going the entire time. And as if to say that, yes, that is exactly what's going on, here's another bird to confirm that.
Yeah, and not just a bird sitting on a fence, but the birds fighting over eating Coil's like brain.
Yeah. And I think it's too much of a stretch to say that the Simurgh was influencing Taylor's decisions to do this. I don't think that's true. I think she was just able to see this and able to manipulate the travelers in a way to get them to this point for that decision on her own. Like I don't want to stretch that out so far and take away Taylor's agency through all this, but this is definitely an intentional callback to the bird imagery to show us that, yes, here it is. Here was the thing here was the guided missile that you were trying to avoid all this time. Yep.
I think you're right about that. I think that we're told the Simurgh sees the future, and she doesn't. If something was going to happen anyway, she doesn't need to make a Goldberg machine to cause it to happen. So yeah.
And man, like, I love this arc so much. Like, we talked about some little nitpicky things that I didn't like, Matt, but there's so much here, and I don't like I feel like we just touched the surface. Like, I feel like there's so much more we could get into. There's so much more I could talk about as far as what I think the Simurgh can represent from like a metatextual type of way. But the point being that I think this was a mastercraft in a little mini story that still manages to tie into our overall story. And you feel like suddenly these travelers so much, and we're about to have this big, huge battle that seems to be set up now, but now we understand the stakes more than we ever have.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we just spent a long time going into quite a bit of detail, and yet I agree with you with the feeling that there's so much more to say here. And I think it's the ultimate thing about it is, like, even though I just read this like 3 times in a row basically and wrote a detailed synopsis, I kind of want to go back through it and look at certain specific things based on this discussion that we've had. So it just kind of indicates the richness of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I guess we should say here that these all came out, one a day for a week or something, that this was another one of the ridiculous speed writing sessions that Wild Bow went through, which is just insane to me.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. It's really amazing. All right. Well, Scott, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about a lot of stuff happened that we've been waiting to happen. So let's get into the Scott speculations.
All right, so let's first go through some of those old ones. I said that Noelle is the result of Cauldron tinkering to try to create an Endbringer. This was wrong. Noelle thinks she might be turning into an Endbringer, but we have no actual conversation for that, and it was definitely not directly because of Cauldron experimenting or anything. So that was wrong. Number 2, I said Genesis was a Cauldron Vial Cape. That is correct. They all were. This, if you remember, was because of little indications that her power seemed similar to Siberian's, and we had confirmation that Siberian was, so I made a mental leap there and ended up being correct. And then later, as we learned more, I had decided that number 3, the Travelers are all Cauldron Capes, and that Noelle is the result of a faulty or bad vial, and it was Trickster's idea to get the vials. I'm going to give myself a correct on this one. It didn't quite go the way I thought it was, but I think faulty and half are similar.
Yeah.
And it was Trickster did find the vials. He brought them back. It was his idea to give the one to Noelle. So yeah, let's say that's a yes.
Yeah. I mean, it does make me wonder what influence, like obviously Noelle's in bad shape. It makes me wonder if she'd had the full vial, would she still have had like a bad reaction powers wise?
Yeah. I really wonder about that because we see Oliver not have a bad reaction. Just he kind of has what Trickster was thinking was that it was just a weak, not very useful power. But on Noelle's side, it was not. That's very curious. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you have for us for new predictions?
All right. So number one, Trickster's tale lines up so much with a traditional Greek tragic story that I'm going to say this will be a Greek tragic story that our pal Trickster does not survive. I believe he will end up dead, and believe he will end up dead at the hands of Noelle in true tragic story fashion.
Okay.
So that's just me using ancient story tropes to predict the future, and we'll see if I'm right. And then number two, so this is kind of what we've been teasing the entire episode, that there's clearly something wrong with Noelle. She clearly has some sort of physical or mental disorder. I think it's been reinforced quite a lot here that it is some sort of eating disorder. That's my formal prediction. I'm going to guess anorexia at this point because we don't see her binge or anything like that. We just see her there's really weird beats. Like we know Marissa knows about this, and there's this beat where we're in the flashback and Marissa sits down at a table next to her and takes her pizza and puts it on Noelle's plate, who then picks at a piece of the crust, and there's these little tiny things. And then we talk about how surprised Marissa is when she says she's hungry and she wants to eat. And then of course just the idea that her powers are seemingly reflectant of the things that she's so self-conscious about. So she feels the need to constantly eat, and when she does starve herself is when she rampages, and then her insecurity allows her to not want to be touched, and of course that's represented in terrible things happen when you touch her. So that's that guess.
I don't know, Scott. That's all pretty thin.
I just talked for 5 minutes. How's that thin?
I don't know, Scott. Well, I guess we'll see.
Was that an anorexia joke when you thin?
No,
that's
God,
important.
It wasn't.
That's
oh my God,
that's in poor taste, Matt. That's terrible.
That was not intended. Oh no. Oh no.
We obviously did not mean that. We recognize that these are very serious disorders that need to be taken seriously. There's a movie on Netflix, To the Bone, that's actually pretty good. It's about a girl suffering from an eating disorder.
I didn't know that. I feel terrible now.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Good prediction, Scott. And that will wrap up our coverage of Arc 17.
Good, because we are running late. So late.
I think we are. I hope everyone enjoyed our discussion nonetheless, and hearing Scott's reactions. As always, we appreciate your feedback, and we're always trying to improve. So let us know if you have any advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's episode.
Yeah, you can reach us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or on Twitter at gotwormpod. Twitter is also where I do my weekly live tweets of each arc as I read them. My personal Twitter is at ScottDaily85, and Matt's is at MoreDinamail. We're so late, I'm not even going to make a joke there.
If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Worm, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on all podcast platforms.
All of them.
Yep.
And as always, you can find all the other podcasts we do, and all of our writing, essays, film, and TV criticism, and more at dailyplanetfilms.com.
We also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms. That's DALY. If you like what we do here and want to help make sure that we keep doing more of it, consider donating $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. A special thanks to new associate producer Kitchicott and new producer TFFan123. We have published the poll to choose from 3 submitted artworks for our fan art contest. The vote will be open from now until next week's episode. So if you're a patron, vote now. If you're not, well, patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms.
Scott, mental note, publish that poll.
Yeah.
But that is right. Also, we recently hit our next Patreon goal. We mentioned it last week, and then you guys made it happen. Thank you so much. So that means that the Daily Planet Book Club is happening. Voting is now open for August's book. We've only had about half of our patrons vote at this point, so guys, get in there and make your voice heard. Please note that while voting for this book is restricted to just patrons, that's a benefit for our patrons. The book club itself will be open to everyone. So we close the vote on Friday, and we'll announce the book, and then we'll give everyone plenty of time to read the book along with us if you want, and then we'll meet near the end of the month, and Matt and I will have a discussion, and we'll take your guys' questions, and it's going to be really fun. I'm so looking forward to this happening, and I really thank you guys for helping make this happen.
Yeah, we really enjoy this. And of course, while you're over there at Patreon, make sure you stop by Wildbow's page and toss some money his way, because he's the guy that makes this whole thing possible.
And as always, if you are one of those that can't spare any extra cash, we do completely understand, but there are still tons of ways to help us out. You can share our podcast with friends and family and those people you went to high school with, but added you on Facebook for some weird reason, even though you haven't talked to them for like 10 years.
That's right. Send a link to your own personal Cody.
And if you listen on iTunes, please, please, please take a quick second to rate and review us. It really does help. This week's Spotlight reviewer is CGuest7, who gives us 5 stars and says, "It's not that I needed an excuse to reread Worm, but I might as well. Short and sweet, but awesome. Thank you, CGuest. I'm glad that we encourage you to start another reread. It's weird. I think when I finish this, I might read it again."
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's it for us this week. Next week, we finally get to cover one whole...
we didn't update this part of the script.
Yeah. No. All right. Let me try that again. All right. That's it for us this week. Next week, we will be covering Arc 18, Queen. Scott, judging by the arc title, what do you think this one is about?
Well, Matt, we will only be covering the first half of Arc 18, Queen, because this arc is 1 billion words long like the last one. We have not set up the designation yet. We'll announce that on Twitter when we decide what we're reading to. But my guess is that we will see Queen Taylor, ruler of all Brockton Bay. But seriously, my guess is that Noelle is going to be something of a queen herself, ruling over a bunch of terrible clones of everyone when they touch her, and then she's going to attack the whole city, and perhaps we'll have the 2 queens of Brockton Bay fighting over each other in Taylor and Noelle. Either way, I am in for this. I am very excited to see. We've got the backstory, we've got all the pieces in place, and it's action time, man.
Yeah, speaking of pieces, the Travelers are fond of their chess metaphors.
Yeah.
And Queen would be one of them. Yeah,
that's clever.
But anyway, we'll find out next week on We've Got Worm.
Matt, when people said go ahead and take 3 hours, I was like, don't be ridiculous. We're not gonna take 3 hours.
Yeah, I think
we did.
I think